Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Had a Mysterious Ocular Quirk? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya sat quietly in front of his family computer, his legs dangling well over the floor. He watched again and again as his hero, All Might carried dozens of people out of burning rubble and wreckage, laughing despite the chaos, destruction, and blood, even his own. Just this morning, watching this video would have brought out the biggest smile on Izuku's face, a smile so pure and full of joy that even the hardest of villains would rethink their life choices. But unfortunately, not all men are created equal. From behind him, Izuku could hear Inko Midoriya shuffling around, busying herself with something, anything. He knew she felt bad for her son, pitied him even. But she was his mother, so he knew when he needed comfort, she would be the first to give it to him. "Mom?" He called out, his voice shaky with unshed tears. No matter how bad it is, he's always smiling when he saves you. Izuku turned slowly to his mother, the tears finally falling like rain despite the brave smile he tried emulating. "I want to be a cool hero like that." His mother didn't even hesitate to run to him, wrapping her arms around her child tightly and sobbing sympathetically. "Izuku, here it comes. Mom'll make it all better. Like always. Who cares if I'm quirkless, right?" "I'm sorry, Izuku," Inko wailed, her grip tightening around his body. Time stopped for Izuku at that moment, almost as if the fourth dimension itself wanted to keep him trapped in that moment of hell forever. "Mom, I want to save people, please. Tell me I can, please?" Oblivious to the trauma scraping away at her son at the moment, Inko just held him even closer with eyes shut just as tightly, terribly unaware of the flash of red beneath her child's teary gaze. 10 years later, Izuku looked down at his feet as he continued his long walk home, his body hollow and numb to the outside world. The situation was almost comical, really. In one day, he got eviscerated by Kaken in front of the whole class, had his notebook destroyed, got violated by a sludge villain, and then learned that his idol, All Might, was fighting crime on borrowed time. Oh, and also, he told Izuku that he couldn't be a hero. He stopped on the sidewalk and gave a sad smile to no one in particular. "It's funny, I know he's right that being quirkless would make it really hard to be a hero, but having it come from him of all people hurts a lot more than I thought." Izuku clutched his chest as he felt tears begin forming. "I can't tell if I want to cry or scream more." Then he heard an ear-piercing cry. Yeah, just like that. Then Izuku felt his bones shake from the sound of a powerful explosion around the corner. He could already see people fleeing the scene. He even caught sight of Kamui Woods swinging to where the explosion came from. Peering down the road, he saw a small crowd circling some sort of commotion. He could also see pro-heroes like Death Arms and MT Lady joining Kamui Woods to try to either calm down the crowd or deal with whatever was causing all the havoc. Then he saw the sludge villain at the center of it all and his skin blanched. How is that possible? All Might captured him and put him in his pocket. Then Izuku remembered the commotion from when he grabbed the #1 hero and the jerky movements that could have all too easily dislodged a poorly secured bottle. He fell out at that moment. That means, this is my fault. Apparently the villain's got a middle schooler trapped right now. A random person commented from the crowd. "What? Why aren't the heroes doing anything?" Another pedestrian said, "I thought All Might was dealing with this villain. Where'd he go? All Might's here? Where is he? Oh no. It's also my fault All Might can't help out right now. If I wasn't such an idiot back then the villain would never have gotten out and All Might would still have time left in his muscle form. Damn it, why am I so useless?" Then Izuku saw the sludge villain's hostage. Kaken? Before he knew it, he had broken through Death Arm and the police's barricade and was running straight towards the villain. He heard people call out in surprise and shock, but nothing really registered in his chaotic mind. "Get back here, you idiot!" Death Arms called out to him, but the teenager was beyond reason right now. From the crowd, a skeletal man with blonde hair watched as the child he admonished earlier made a mad dash for the villain causing so much havoc. "What the hell? The villain saw the incoming 14-year-old and recalled, "It's that kid from earlier. Does he have some sort of a death wish?" Bakugo could vaguely make out a shape through the pain, but he quickly recognized the poofy hair and lanky figure. "Deku?" he murmured weakly. Izuku's thoughts were racing at light speed at the moment, but his gaze was locked onto one thing: those fearful eyes. It was a look Izuku knew well from personal experience, ironically because of the person who currently wore it. But seeing his childhood friend turn bully with that look of absolute terror lit something inside of Izuku that he thought long dead. "I want to save people." Time slowed down for Izuku, as if the sludge villain was moving in water or something. In a split second, without even thinking about what was going on, Izuku determined the villain's weak spot and formulated a plan of attack. He tossed his backpack with all his might at the villain's eye, managing to nail it with perfect accuracy. Then, he began clawing at the slime surrounding his classmate with the speed of a man possessed. "Deku? What are you doing?" Bakugo growled. Izuku looked at his former friend and flashed a terrified smile. "I just couldn't do nothing. Would you do me a favor and just die?" The villain roared as he made Bakugo fire several explosions to push his assailant back. Then, the villain swung at Izuku with a particularly long tendril, intent on crushing the teenager into a different, more gruesome type of sludge. However, Izuku saw the villain's movement in slow motion again. It was almost like his brain was processing all the visual information available to him even faster than his already quick brain could normally handle. What's going on? So as the villain was preparing to use Bakugo's explosions, Izuku was in the jumping position. Then, as he was beginning to swing the tendril, Izuku was already crouched under its trajectory. Same for the next several attacks. It became increasingly clear to Izuku that despite the power and gross factor of the villain's quirk, he was rather predictable as a fighter. "He's getting sloppy. He keeps me away with Kaken's quirk, but maybe I can use that to my advantage. If this attack pattern keeps up, I'll have an opening right now." Izuku jumped over a tendril and dashed straight for Bakugo. Izuku could hear the pro-heroes and police yelling at him again, but for once in his life, he felt good about the situation. All Might watched the scene unfold. This quirkless kid, damn it. Why am I so useless right now? Then All Might saw Izuku's eyes and his skin blanched. "Wait a minute. Haven't you learned your lesson? You can't get near me." The villain lifted Bakugo's arm and prepared to fire. "What are you doing, idiot? You have a death wish?" Bakugo grit through the pain as he watched Izuku take action. Why doesn't he just run? The most significant way to change the direction of an arm is the shoulder, so if I grab his wrists, I can leverage them easily. Izuku ducked under the initial wave of explosions, which fired exactly where he thought they would, and grabbed Bakugo's wrists. Then, with all his strength, he pushed them up, right in time for the second wave of explosions, which fired not at Izuku but right into the eyes of the villain. In that moment of confusion, Izuku managed to pull Bakugo out of the slime and to the wall opposite the villain. His heart was racing and he wasn't sure about the condition of his pants, but he had the biggest smile on his face. "Don't worry, Kaken. Everything's gonna be okay now." Exhausted and barely conscious, Bakugo could barely mutter, "Run, you damn nerd." The villain roared, his eyes shut tight from the damage. "Enough of this." He spun wildly, sending an absolute onslaught of tendrils in every direction at incredible speed. Izuku paled as he tried to move but felt imminent danger at every course of action. Despite his insight, it was clear that the villain's sheer physical ability coupled with Bakugo's lack of mobility essentially removed all options. "These are way faster than before. I can see them coming and I know where to go, but my body can't move fast enough. Mom, I'm sorry." Izuku shielded Bakugo's body with his own and prepared for the worst. "I really am pathetic, huh? I really need to practice what I preach." Izuku's eyes shot open and he turned around slowly, feeling intense relief wash over him. The towering figure of All Might stared back at him with a smile as wide as he'd ever seen, the back of his shirt dripping with presumably the slime he shielded the teens from. "Apologies for taking so long, but have no fear. Because I am here." With that, All Might delivered the mother of all uppercuts, splattering the sludge villain, extinguishing most of the fires, and creating a freaking rainstorm. Holy shit. He changed the weather with one punch. A bystander cried out in awe as the crowd erupted into triumphant cheers. Izuku's eyes welled up with relief, almost painfully so, a sudden wave of exhaustion hitting him as adrenaline left his body. Rubbing his eyes, he stuttered, "All Might. Thank wife. He saved us even though he's injured and already tired out. He's so cool." The symbol of peace flashed the teens a grin. "Don't worry about it, kid. Happy to help. Ugh, I need to get out of here before the reporters hound me. I'm already past my limit as it is." All Might thought to himself as he turned from the slime splatter to the teens he just saved. "You two all right?" All Might watched as paramedics and pro-heroes looked over the kids, but he paid extra attention to the green-haired one. "I know what I saw. Looks like I really need to have a talk with him." After getting thoroughly chewed out by Death Arms and Kamui Woods for getting involved, all while Slugger and the police were practically fawning over Bakugo, Izuku decided to go home, his path illuminated by the evening sunset. Lost in his own thoughts and the sound of his trudges, he didn't notice the sound of someone running until they called, "Deku." Izuku turned around quickly, taken aback by the sudden arrival. "Kaken?" Bakugo clenched his fist as he roared, "Don't think I needed your help or anything today. I had that slime prick right where I wanted him. Far as I'm concerned, you're still a useless so, don't go thinking this changes anything." Bakugo then turned and stormed off, leaving one very bewildered Midoriya behind. "What was that about?" Izuku gave a sad smile. "I guess Kaken's always gonna be Kaken." Izuku turned around, rubbing his eyes, only to fall back with a shriek as a massive figure came barreling out from the nearby alley. "I am here, young Midoriya. All Might? I thought you got hounded by the press. What are you doing here?" Izuku managed to squeak, his heart still racing from the shock. The hero let out a booming laugh. "Ha! Escaping those journalists was nothing at all. But because he..." All Might spat out an impossible amount of blood as he shrunk to his true form, wrapped in a cloak of steam. "Oh my god!" Izuku shrieked again, his already irritated eyes and naturally overactive tear ducts threatening to unleash a flood of biblical proportions. All Might wiped his mouth and cleared his throat. "Sorry about that. Anyways, I wanted to talk to you about your actions back there." Izuku looked down at his feet as tears began forming. "I know. I'm sorry I caused so much trouble. I don't know what happened. It was like dash. Your body moved without thinking, right?" Izuku's head shot up to his idol and nodded. "Why?" All Might nodded in acknowledgement and spoke. "You know, all the greatest heroes showed signs as children that they were destined to be pillars in society. And all of them share the same thing in common. They all acted without thinking about themselves. That's self-sacrifice. You get what I'm saying?" Izuku nodded again, his heart beating faster with every word. "Is he saying? What is he saying?" All Might took a deep breath and continued. "Kid, I told you that you couldn't be a hero. Yet, not an hour later, you're the only one to charge right into a villain to save someone else. And not only that, you put up a hell of a fight. And even beyond that, you inspired me to go beyond." Tears were threatening to fall, but for once, they weren't from sadness or despair. Izuku remembered the words of his mother, his teachers, his classmates. Everyone who told him that he couldn't be what he wanted to be. What he needed to be. "Kid, you can be a hero. There was no stopping these waterworks." His heart was positively bursting. His idol and the world's greatest hero had just told him, Deku Midoriya, that he could become a hero. Finally, someone believes in me. I feel like nothing else matters right now. I just want to remember this moment forever and ever. He looked up at his hero and smiled as widely as he could. All Might looked at the kid with a smile before noticing the other thing he wanted to talk about. "Oh, speaking of which, kid, I thought you told me you were quirkless?" "Huh?" All Might looked at the kneeling boy curiously. "You told me you were quirkless, but you clearly have a quirk. What gives?" "Huh?" Izuku just stared at All Might, his eyes wide. "Don't tell me you didn't know about it? Like here look." All Might quickly took his phone out and snapped a picture before showing the screen to Izuku. "Huh?" In the picture, Izuku's bright green eyes were gone, replaced by a glowing red. What's more, his pupils appeared to be surrounded by a black ring with two comma-like symbols spaced evenly apart. Meanwhile, his real eyes reappeared, the red glow vanishing. All Might was a loss for words. Congratulations? I'm at a loss for words here. It's pretty late to manifest your quirk. You're what, 11? 12? Izuku squeaked, I'm almost 15. The symbol of peace spat up a waterfall of blood, so scrawny. He barely registered All Might's words as he continued gaping in awe at the picture. I have a quirk? It makes sense. Professors on quirk theory often like to say that quirks are analogous to muscles, with emitter and transformation types often triggered by reflex. I noticed my perception and analysis was a lot faster than normal, but I thought that was just adrenaline. Although I also had a degree of insight too, which I suppose is just a higher application of analysis, but for me to have used it so well in the middle of my first villain fight, I should have realized that something was up, although how could I when I was so focused on not dying and saving Kaken? Speaking of Kaken, I wonder if he'll stop calling me Deku now that I have a quirk. But speaking of that, how come it just manifested? Anna thought the doctor told me that I had the extra joint so is halden thavia quirk factor, although I think that's just correlation, which isn't causation so maybe I'm just an outlier from the norm which could. Stop. All Might briefly transformed and lightly chopped Izuku's head. You're giving me an aneurysm. Ga. Izuku exclaimed before he bowed continuously, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was saying that out loud. Please forgive me. All Might sighed as he rubbed his temple. I picked a weird fanboy. This just comes with the territory. Look kid, there's one more thing I wanted to talk to you about. The fact that you weren't even aware of your quirk when you rushed in to save your friend just makes me more sure about this. Izuku was even more confused now. What could be bigger than telling me that I have a quirk? I believe you are worthy to inherit my quirk. What? Izuku quickly began a new muttering storm as he fervently tried to decode All Might's verbiage. Sighing, the hero continued, my quirk is called One for All. Izuku's eyes widened and he felt the air grow thicker as if the wind itself knew the significance of what All Might was saying. For all, All Might nodded, yes. It's a quirk passed down from person to person, master to student. It's the crystallization of all of our combined strength, stockpiled throughout the generations and focused into one person. Anyways, you know about my injury, yeah? Izuku nodded quietly, recalling the ghastly sight on that rooftop. Well, since I can't use this power to its fullest, I need to pass it on to the next generation. And who better to be my successor than the not-so-quirkless boy who rushed into the heat of battle before anyone else? Wait. You're offering me your power? I'd be as strong as you? All Might chuckled at the boy's awestruck expression. Yes, you would be as strong as I am. Stronger, actually. Eventually. Plus, having a quirk might create some interesting effects too. Izuku tried to open his mouth, but all that came out was a squeak. His mind was racing faster than he thought possible. Then he heard a small ringing sound and momentary itch in his eyes. Oh hey, it's back? All Might commented. Huh. Izuku gasped, only to feel that itch again and hear another, lower-pitch ringing tone. And it's gone. Weird. Anyways, I don't expect an answer right away, but dash. I accept. Izuku's eyes shone not with the power of his quirk, but with determination. All Might looked stunned for a moment, but grinned soon after. Good answer. All Might, where are we going? Izuku asked his companion as they walked down the Mizudafu streets. It was the next day and Izuku received a text during lunch to meet All Might after school. After fanboying over how his idol was personally messaging him, he agreed and promptly got on a train the second the bell rang. All Might chuckled, in his true form so as not to attract attention. Well, I know you must be excited to start training to receive my power, but I think you should learn about your own quirk first. Also, I haven't finished your training plan yet. All Might muttered that last part quietly. But where are we going for that? My doctor's office is the other way. All Might shook his head. If he couldn't recognize that you had a quirk then, I doubt he'd be much help. No, we're going to see the world's greatest physician and an expert on quirk physiology. Besides, it's always good to tour your prospective school. My prospective... Izuku began trembling with both nervousness and excitement. No. No way. No freaking way. This continued even after All Might took him past the UA gates and to the nurse's office. All Might, I got your message. So, this is your successor? Little young, isn't he? Yes, thank you for meeting with us. He waited for a moment before nudging his protege and hissing, "Introduce yourself. I'm Izuku Midoriya, Ms. Youthful Heroine, recovery girl, ma'am." Damn it. Sighing, All Might tried to salvage this first impression. Young Midoriya here is actually taking the entrance exam next year. Oh, so he's not young. He's just wimpy. Got it. Recovery girl smiled at the boy. Nice to meet you, Sonny. Would like some candy? She held out a small handful of gummy bears, which the hero-to-be took gratefully. Anyways, let's try to figure out your dilemma. She led him to a chair and rapidly took his vitals, measurements, and a blood sample. While that's getting scanned, why don't you try to show me your quirk? Izuku nodded and tried to turn it on, only to realize something crucial. How do I activate a quirk? All Might rapidly announced in his muscular form, clench your buttocks and yell dash. Shut up. Recovery girl hissed, prompting the now dejected number 1 hero to nod and sulk in the corner. Anyways, Sonny, just try to reproduce whatever feeling triggered it in the first place. Do you remember what it felt like to use your quirk? Izuku thought about it and smiled after a moment. Yeah, it felt itchy when I turned it on. And I could hear a ringing sound. And then it was like whoosh and everything was slower and I could tell what was gonna happen and it like beep. Recovery girl gave a forced smile and made notes in her binder. He's certainly as weird as All Might, I'll give him that. Okay, now try to recall your emotional state when that happened. Got it. My emotional state. Izuku remembered how it felt to see Bakugo struggling and in need of a hero, or when All Might told Izuku that he could be a hero. And then, Izuku's eyes shot open, now red and outlined with 2 tomo. Recovery girl smiled. Well done. Now let me make some notes and I'll pull up the quirk registry and see if I can find any similar cases such as yours. She spent some time on the computer before gesturing Izuku and All Might to the screen. Now, there are only about 10,000 cases of people with late quirk manifestations since we began recording this information. That's a pretty small number of people considering there are over 12 billion people with quirks in this registry. However, there are over 100 cases where people with late quirk manifestation also had red eyes like yours. All Might rubbed his chin. That's pretty rare. Recovery girl shook her head. That means 1 out every 100 late bloomer has or had a quirk that changed eye color to red. That's incredibly specific. If I had to guess, I'd say your quirk is caused by a recurring mutation. It's almost like convergent evolution. She pulled up another page and showed it to her guests. Now, this is Midoriya's maternal family tree from the National Registry. Their quirk history goes back 4 generations. But nobody has a quirk remotely similar to Midoriya. Recovery girl closed out the web page and pulled forth another family tree. His father, on the other hand, reportedly had an uncle with glowing eyes from heat vision. So that's at least a hint to a hereditary history. Izuku's eyes widened. Really? Does that mean I can shoot fire from my eyes? Recovery girl shrugged. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. It's not likely, but it's also not impossible. At that moment, the machine where Recovery girl placed the blood sample started beeping. Well, that'd be the analysis. What is it? All Might asked. Izuku gripped his school uniform. Please be good news. Please be good news. Recovery girl smiled. Well, you definitely have a quirk factor. That much is certain. Izuku felt a lightness in his chest. I mean, I knew I had to 'cause of the picture, but just hearing it said out loud. As for why your doctor couldn't diagnose, I'd say it's because the mutagenic factor affects your eyes and optical nerves exclusively, not any other part of your body. So trying to use a marker, like the toe joint, wouldn't do much good. Though I always that the prerequisite for being able to mutate a quirk in the first place is the loss of vestigial physiology like the toe joint. Upon further analysis, Recovery girl then rubbed her chin. It appears that your quirk factor affects a series of marker genes. Izuku hesitated before asking, Miss Recovery girl? What does that mean? She chuckled. Sorry. Those are genes that every human has. Some other species actually have this one too. But this would explain why there are multiple quirks with similar characteristics popping up under mysterious circumstances. From all the information I have, which really isn't much, I'd say your quirk is the result of a rare, but recurring mutation. I'll see if I can find anyone on that list from earlier that's still alive for comparison's sake. All Might thought before asking, how do you think One for All would interact with his quirk? Izuku blanched before realizing. Of course, she'd know about One for All. She knew I was his successor, didn't she? She probably treated All Might for his injury, so she'd know about that too. Recovery Girl shrugged, it's hard to guess. I'd say to just use it as often as you can, in a safe and legal setting of course. Learn its capabilities. Test it out. Push yourself. That's the only way quirks grow. If you break them down, they'll build themselves back up. Speaking of growing, All Might grew into his muscular form. Let's begin our training tomorrow. 6 a.m. at Dagobah Beach. That work for you? Izuku grinned and nodded furiously, yes sir. Ha, now that's what I like to hear. See you tomorrow, young Midoriya. With that, All Might dashed out of the nurse's office at breakneck speed. Izuku stood there dumbfounded for a moment before murmuring, I don't know how to go home. It was a cold April morning as Izuku pulled a refrigerator with every fiber of his being. As one is prone to do at 6 in the morning on an abandoned beach. It sure is comfy on this fridge. So peaceful and immobile. All Might taunted while perched on the kitchen appliance like an oversized bird. Izuku gave one last heave before collapsing on his back, panting heavily. Why do I need to pull this refrigerator? To put it simply, you're an insufficient vessel for One for All. What? Why you said I was worthy? Izuku began the waterworks as All Might tried desperately to calm him down. Right now. Only for now. Your spirit is great, but if you tried to use my quirk as you are, physically, your limbs would explode. That made Izuku start screaming as he imagined his arms bursting. That's why we're training. After you complete my aim to pass, American Dream Plan, you'll be a proper vessel fit for any quirk. All Might slyly snapped a picture on his phone as he said that. Izuku nodded in understanding, so I'll be as strong as you then? Or stronger since One for All stockpiles power. All Might's sweat dropped, in a ways. What does that mean? Well, have my power but... Izuku was starting to get worried. All Might? Is there something I should know? All Might was now sweating profusely. You might have some kickback when you use One for All for the first time. Kickback? Izuku was now imagining his arms ricocheting off his body as he tried to punch something. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. All Might tried to comfort his student, don't worry about it. For now, let's just work on getting you into shape and fixing this place up. Izuku raised an eyebrow, fixing this place? What's wrong with it? I did some research. Apparently, this place used to be one of the most beautiful beaches in the country. But now it's little more than a junkyard. All Might gestured to the miles of trash littering the coast. Izuku nodded in understanding. Yeah, I heard the currents bring trash from the ocean onto the shore. Then people started dumping stuff here since it was sorta dirty anyways. All Might nodded. Now, even the locals won't come here. Heroes today are all about fame and glory and riches. But being a hero used to mean helping out the community. And what better way to help out the community than by volunteering service? Izuku cheered, thoroughly pumped up, and prepared to start hauling trash again, only to remember something and freeze. Why the hesitation, young Midoriya? Don't you want to be a real hero? Why yeah, of course, but I had a question. See, I told my mom about my quirk and she told me I should get it registered, but... All Might smiled. You don't know how to, do you? Izuku looked down sheepishly and nodded. All Might clapped him on the shoulder. Not to worry, young Midoriya. Everything with be all might with me here. Izuku chuckled politely at that, but inwardly he was questioning ever idolizing this man for that pun. But truth be told, you might want to hold off on registering. Your quirk, as it is fairly different from what One for All can do. Going from quirkless gives you the chance to basically put anything on the form that you want, but once you're registered as having heightened perception for a quirk, it'll be difficult to include super strength, speed, and endurance in that. Izuku thought about it and nodded. Okay, I understand. All Might asked, but speaking of your quirk, have you found anything interesting about it? A bright look overcame Izuku's face. Oh yeah. I wrote down a bunch of info about it in my notebook. Wanna read it? All Might nodded and was subsequently handed a badly burnt notebook titled Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. 13? What a fanboy. He flipped to the last written entry and nearly fainted at the sheer number of notes. Okay, Tashinori, just focus on the important stuff. Subject: Izuku Midoriya, I have a quirk. Quirk: to be determined. Known abilities: increased perception, predictive ability, insight, and analytical skill. Allows for rapid reaction and strategy against physical threats. Also enables replication of physical moves by observing target. Microscopic/telescoping? Vision, range unknown. X-ray vision? Activation method, triggered by emotional stress. Activates by recollection of that stress. Takes a while to activate because of this. Notes: can only maintain 4 to 5 minutes continuously before exhaustion. Recharge rate unknown. Physical mimicry is limited by subject's own ability and requires heavy focus. When active, iris glows slightly. Tomo spin around pupil when using special skill. Young Midoriya, this is very impressive. I think this will greatly assist Recovery Girl in determining more about your quirk's origin. He did this all in just one night. What do you mean by replication of physical moves, though? Izuku suddenly blushed and looked down. Last night. Welcome back to Dancing with the Stars. Izuku watched the TV excitedly as the announcer got the audience pumped up for the next performance. Mistakes were made. All Might's sweat dropped. I feel like I should have doubts now. Regardless of that escapade, the ability to mimic movements has a lot of potential. Like learning a martial art just by observing it. Luckily, our training regimen includes some calisthenics and aerobics to hopefully increase your ability to perform the moves you copy, but I'm glad to see this enthusiasm. Just the kind of thing I want to see from my successor. Izuku smiled. Thanks, All Might. I really appreciate all you're doing for me. This kid's gonna make me cry. Nonsense. I'm happy to nurture the next generation of heroes, especially when it involves my successor. Wait a minute, I'm a genius. Actually, I just thought of something else I can do for you. Izuku waved his hands in front of his face, and no, seriously, All Might. You've done enough for me. Sharingan. Huh. All Might explained, your quirk doesn't have a name yet, so I'm giving it one. Copy wheel I, Sharingan. Sharingan. Izuku mulled it over and grinned. Sharingan. It sounds great. All Might smiled at his student. Then he looked at his watch and nearly vomited. So much wasted time. Come on, young Midoriya. We've got a lot to make up before school. With that began Izuku Midoriya's training from hell. 10 months later. All Might locked his truck as he adjusted his scarf. While walking towards the beach, he heard a scream. A villain? At this hour? Taking off a sprint, All Might prepared to transform, only to stop dead in his tracks. The entire beach practically sparkled with a complete and utter lack of trash and litter. And atop a large mound of garbage on the edge of the sand stood Izuku Midoriya, screaming no, roaring, his head off to the heavens above. All Might was at a loss for words. He cleaned up outside the area I told him to, and just in time, too. Oh my goodness. The fully transformed All Might dashed towards his protege in time to catch him as he fell. Izuku looked at his mentor and weakly stated, All Might, I did it? All Might set Izuku down and shook his head with a massive grin. No, young Midoriya. You did even more that. You thoroughly exceeded my expectations. And now I can say with the utmost certainty that you're a proper vessel. Just look at yourself when we started. All Might pulled out his phone and showed the picture he took 10 months ago featuring a crying, scrawny boy lying in the sand. Now, that same boy is, well, he still isn't a man, but he definitely isn't scrawny. Though he still cries a lot. But he isn't lying down in the sand anymore. Baby steps. I know I worked for this, but I still feel like I cheated somehow. Izuku commented while tiredly juxtaposing his muscular figure to his previous one. All Might lightly chopped his head. Nonsense. There's a monumental difference between being born with a silver spoon and working your butt off for it. Now, the time has come for you to inherit my power. All Might plucked a hair from his head. Izuku smiled and nodded. I'm ready. Finally, after all that work, It's finally paying off. All Might held out his hair and exclaimed the 3 worst words in the best possible way, "Now, eat this." Izuku Midoriya stood outside the gates to the testing center, barely moving. Everything I've been through, the last 10 months, everything has been leading to this moment. I can't let everyone down, although I guess everyone is really just Mom and All Might. Oh, and Recovery Girl too. She's nice, I had a point to this. He tried to finish his train of thought, but a walking interruption named Katsuki Bakugo decided to interrupt. "Move way damn nerd. We're gonna be late." Izuku instinctively flinched. Kaken. The explosive blonde just shook his head and strutted past with a huff. "Just don't get in my way, got it?" Izuku nodded furiously. "Got it? Crystal clear. I have never comprehended anything more than your instruction," and he's gone. Izuku sighed. Even after all this time and everything with the villain last year, he still hates my guts. At least he stopped bothering me at school. Izuku watched Katsuki walk up the stairs to the testing hall, overhearing some murmurs from fellow examinees who recognized him from last year's news reports. Although, I guess things haven't been too easy for him either. Shaking his head clear of thoughts, Izuku stepped over the threshold of the gates. Here goes. My very first step in my new life as the future symbol of peace. Then he tripped. Just randomly. As one is prone to do. I regret everything. He braced himself to hit first base with the ground, only to realize he wasn't moving at all. In fact, he was somehow suspended in midair, feeling completely weightless. Wadash! Izuku screeched in surprise, earning more than a few condescending giggles from the other examinees. Sorry for using my quirk on you without asking first, but I figured it's bad luck to fall before an exam. A friendly, almost saccharine voice sounded from behind him. Turning around, Izuku was greeted with every teenage boy's best dream and simultaneous worst nightmare. A teenage girl. Specifically, a short one with a brown bob, permanent blush, and massive brown eyes. Oh no, she's attractive. Every neuron in his brain began firing at such speed, he had to double-check that his Sharingan wasn't active. He tried to utter anything in response, but human speech had utterly failed him. Instead, he tried to communicate through a series of inaudible and panicked exhales. The girl stared at him for a minute before smiling. Anyways, let me help you down. She reached for his shoulders and lowered his feet back to the ground. She seemed oblivious to the fact that just touching this boy had both stopped and jump-started his heart. Then she tapped her fingertips, release, and Izuku felt the force of gravity return. Anyways, good luck in there. I'll see you around. She walked away as quickly as she came in, and young Midoriya was both grateful and devastated. However, one truth, one certainty, kept him sane throughout this trying ordeal. I just talked to a girl. A smile so bright that it put the first quirk to shame flashed across Izuku's face. Should I even take the exam now? I feel like nothing could top that. Then his stomach gurgled, and he remembered what heinous torture he endured to get one for all. And he wasn't thinking about the training. I didn't eat that hair for nothing. Let's do this. Whatever hope Izuku had for this test going well went out the window when he realized that orientation seating was by middle school. Hey Kaken? Izuku muttered as he took his seat next to his volatile classmate. Bakugo growled in acknowledgement, which was honestly better than Izuku could have hoped for. Then the lights dimmed, and a booming voice resounded throughout the auditorium. Hey there, my young listeners. Can I get a yeah? The silence that followed was deafening. No worries. I'm here to give you the rundown on this here exam. Are you ready? This silence was even more so. Present Mike continued despite the lackluster reception, seemingly drowning out the sounds of a young otaku fanboying in the stands. Oh my god, it's Present Mike. I can't believe he say. Thesis dash. Bakugo had enough and he hissed, shut the hell up, Deku. Izuku's face reddened and he clamped a hand over his mouth, earning a few chuckles from some students around him. Oh great, I'm already the UA laughingstock and I'm not even a student yet. Excuse me, Present Mike sir? A loud, serious voice sounded from the back of the auditorium. The student standing up was tall, very well built, and had a serious face to match his voice. You mentioned 3 villains, but this sheet clearly states that there are 4 types. If this is an error, this is a serious oversight, especially for a school as prestigious as UA. Then he turned in Izuku's general direction, and you, stop talking so much. If you think UA is a place where you can goof off while everyone else is trying to learn, then you're better off leaving now. Izuku tried to sink into his seat, his face red. As the sounds of other students laughing filled his ears, he mentally remarked, "Okay, now I'm the school laughingstock." Bakugo watched the events unfold before muttering, "Elitist dickhead." Present Mike grinned, probably at finally having some fan interaction. "Thanks for bringing that up, Examinee 7111-." Izuku cocked his head. "How does he even know that? Did we even get numbered? The first 3 are the 1, 2, and 3 pointers, yeah? Well, that 4th one is a 0-pointer. Think of it like a thwomp in Super Mario Bros. Compared to the other 3 Goombas. It's just an obstacle and it's probably better to avoid it. Good luck with that." Present Mike mentally chuckled. "Just remember to report to the testing site on your packet immediately after the written exam and be sure to follow the rules listed. I don't want to see any of my young listeners getting in trouble for attacking a fellow listener. I'm looking at you, Examinee 3543. Bakugo paled. "How the fuck dash? Seriously, when did we get numbers? With that, I'll let you all go. Just remember to go beyond. Plus ultra." Finishing the written exam was no sweat for Izuku. After all, when you're a quirkless teenager with no social life, you tend to spend a lot of free time in the library. However, waiting in front of the large gates to the massive fake city in front of him and the other examinees was slightly more difficult. Izuku turned to one examinee who was already in the fetal position. "Okay, maybe more than slightly. All right, young listeners, we're just waiting for a few more of you to finish up. Remember, you only have 10 minutes to gather points." Present Mike announced to all the battle zones. Izuku gulped and muttered nervously, "Okay, I've never used one for all, but I remember that All Might said there'd be some kickback. Not entirely sure what that means, but I'm guessing it can't be good. And then I can only use my Sharingan for about 8 minutes continuously before it times out, so I'll need to take breaks every so often to let it rest and max out my time. I guess my best bet is just to use the Sharingan to find the robot's weaknesses and beat them however I can without risking one for all." Smiling and looking up from his successful brainstorm, Izuku was met with the perplexed stares of many of the other prospective students. Not again. Then he noticed that same girl he spoke to out front. "It's the really nice girl. I should thank her properly for earlier." His strides came to halt, however, when he felt a firm hand clasp onto his shoulder. Turning, Izuku came face to face with the same stern, weirdly tall boy who called him out in front of everyone in the auditorium. "Oh crap." The taller kid narrowed his eyes. "She's clearly trying to focus before the exam right now. You weren't thinking about interrupting her, were you?" Izuku shook his head frantically, waving his hands equally so. "I swear. I just twantetto thank her for helping me dash. You're not some dummy contender UA hired to trip us all up, right?" How the other boy managed to say that so seriously surprised Izuku such that he couldn't even reply. Start. The gates suddenly swung open. Now everyone was so surprised that they couldn't reply. Present Mike chuckled into his microphone. "What? There are no countdowns in real life. Get moving." Izuku turned to the gates, only to find every other examinee already running into the mock city. "Oh no, I'm already behind." He ran around the cityscape, desperately searching for a villain robot. "Gotta start searching for points." "Sharingan," Izuku called as he felt the slight itch in his eyes accompanied by the ringing sound he'd so grown to love. "Okay, I see a lot of people concentrated in the city center. That's probably a bad place to go then. Lots of competition. Instead, I'll stick to the edges." Izuku thought only to run smack dab into a 3-pointer. "Oh crap. Well, I guess I wanted to get points as soon as possible. I can see 3 weak points in its shell and I'm pretty sure its power source is right under the missile launchers. It's also really slow and moves predictably. I can do this." Only problem, Izuku wasn't moving. "Why aren't I moving?" The robot started charging the terrified youth. "Oh crap." He averted his gaze and held his hands in front of his face, only to feel a gust of wind as a bright blue beam of electricity shot straight through the robot. He turned to the source of the beam, which was an eccentrically dressed blonde boy with a shit-eating smirk and large eyes that practically sparkled. Merci, mon ami. We make quite the team, non? But I'm afraid we'll never meet again. Adieu. The blonde boy bowed and ran off, presumably to steal more points. Izuku shook his head. Damn it, I completely froze up. I need to get it together. Remember where you came from, Midoriya, and get a grip. Eyes burning with resolve, and also the natural glow of his quirk, Izuku picked up a sharp metal panel from the fallen robot. This looks like it'll come in handy. The 3-pointers are supposed to have the toughest armor, so I should be able to use this as a shield, at least. Izuku kept running until he found another villain, this one a 2-pointer. It immediately launched its scorpion tail at the boy. However, the robot, while faster than the 3-pointer, could not outpace the Sharingan nor the training its wielder went through. He easily dodged the tail and deflected its follow-up with the metal panel. Izuku then rolled to the back of the robot and, with a bit of effort, knocked the tail right off using the panel. He then seized the pointed end with his right hand, his left securely holding his weapon of choice, and buried it into the robot's central console. It immediately sputtered and died. Alright, that's 2 points. 6 minutes and 2 seconds left. I need more points fast. On cue, a 1-pointer rolled around the corner. It must have been attracted by the sound of me fighting the, oh crap. Izuku had to roll out the way as the small robot absolutely barreled right past him. It's a lot faster than the 2-pointer. My Sharingan can't keep up with it. I need to reduce its mobility. Noticing the rubber tire it employed, Izuku began charging the robot, sharp end of his panel held outwards. The robot replied in kind, rolling towards its opponent with its metal arm outstretched. At the last second, however, Izuku slid on the ground and shoved the panel into the tire, bursting it. Simultaneously, he used his legs to push the now exposed rim up, causing the robot to flip onto its back. Definitely lighter than All Might. With a quick swing of the panel, the 1-pointer was decapitated and Izuku tallied another point. That's only 3 though. Since the robots are attracted by noise, maybe I should move inwards. That's better than doing the same thing and hoping it works, I suppose. Izuku gave his Sharingan a break and took off at a sprint, passing several other combatants and robots along the way. I don't want to steal points from the other examinees. Those 1-pointers are open, but they're too fast for me to counter. I can barely follow their movements as it is. I should try to find 2- and 3-pointers instead. After Present Mike announced the 4-minute mark, Izuku finally found another 3-pointer. I'm not gonna freeze this time. Sharingan. Noting a gap between its armor along its center, Izuku easily dodged its attacks and managed to jump onto it when it stopped to turn. He then shoved the sharp end of the panel down the gap, causing the whole robot to shudder and start sparking. Then, the missiles started firing one by one. Oh no, I must have glitched it out. Then he saw a group of robots approaching him, likely attracted by the sounds of the explosions. I can use this. With all his strength, Izuku twisted the missile launcher towards the group and watched as the ensuing barrage turned the 2 3-pointers and 3 1-pointers into scrap metal. He then turned and saw another 2-pointer and 1-pointer racing towards him. Shoving the panel the rest of the way through the 3-pointer he had mounted, Izuku leapt off and started moving perpendicularly to the 1-pointer. At the last second he ducked under it, albeit getting glanced by its metal arm. Oh, that's gonna bruise. He took off towards the 2-pointer, but stopped just short of it. Right here should be good, assuming I timed this right. He then turned back towards the 1-pointer, which was rolling towards him at even greater speed. Almost now. Izuku ducked and moved to the side right as the scorpion tail of the 2-pointer shot out, perfectly impaling the 1-pointer's head. The broken robot continued to roll right into the 2-pointer, destroying it as well. Unfortunately, Izuku had not timed his dodge well and caught the 1-pointer's arm in a more direct fashion. He groaned, clutching his abdomen, acutely aware of someone else shouting about having 28 points and another remarking how they had 45. I can't waste time laying around. I only have 18 points. Gotta catch up to everyone else. Quite the promising pool of candidates this year. Midnight commented to her fellow heroes and proctors, a large number of them watching several screens displaying the different cityscapes. The space hero, 13, added, Indeed. This environment tends to bring out the absolute best in them. From those who gather intelligence before acting, people who use their mobility and reflexes to navigate the large area, those who can adapt to any scenario on the fly. A large boom from one of the TV speakers interrupted 13th's train of thought. He chuckled at the sight of a blond boy panting in a pile of scrap metal, his hands smoking, and then there are just natural-born warriors. Present Mike grinned and spoke normally, the trademark sign that he was genuinely excited. This year might have some good students so far, but there's really only one way to know for sure. He pressed a red button. Izuku sprinted past more and more examinees but saw no robots for him to fight. Oh no, there's no more left. I need to get back to the outskirts as fast as I can. I'm still so behind. Then the entire city shook as a building toppled. What the hell? Another student exclaimed as everyone's jaw dropped. That's the thwomp. It's massive. What version of Mario does Present Mike play? The zero-pointer took a brief moment to look at the crowd of teenagers in front of it before slowly rolling forward, its tank-like treads pulverizing all the rubble in its path. Like any normal person, Izuku started booking it in the opposite direction. Based on its movements so far, it subtly changes direction towards the nearest moving target. So as long as I'm faster than the slowest person, I'll be safe. Oh wow. Izuku's blood ran cold. He was subconsciously aware of dozens of others passing him by as the gargantuan robot approached, but he had to be sure. As long as I'm faster, I'll be safe. I can't waste All Might's training. He turned around slowly, dreading to discover what he already knew. I can't fight that thing. All Might did so much for me. I can't let him down. Zooming in with his Sharingan, he could distinctly detect a life form struggling under some rubble. It's bad luck to fall before an exam. Izuku took off running, charging straight at the zero-pointer with such fervor that even Katsuki Bakugo would turn tail. The nice girl managed to pry the rubble off of her with her quirk, but she visibly struggled to stand up, likely damaging her leg. The zero-pointer stopped moving forward and slowly lowered its massive arm. It's going to flatten her. But if I get closer than her, it'll immediately switch its targeting. He noticed several piles of rubble that formed a ramp of sorts. Perfect. Izuku jumped from mound to mound and then finally leapt with all his strength, the perfect timing and momentum carrying him squarely onto the robot's forearm. Immediately, it stopped moving towards the nice girl. Okay, I need to use these studs to secure my footing. The other examinees watched with gaping mouths as the timid kid they laughed at ran his way up the zero-pointer without even thinking about it. If I can get to its right shoulder, it should turn towards me and away from everyone else. Then I can stall until time runs out. Unfortunately, the Sharingan's time limit reared its ugly head and Izuku slipped on a stud, his footing off without his increased perception and insight. High-intensity usage reduces my time. He shut his eyes, fearing the inevitable fall that awaited him. As he rolled off the side of the robot, towards its torso and a massive drop, Izuku remembered what All Might told him. You can be a hero. I can be a hero. Clench your buttocks. Izuku forced himself to open his eyes and he used his legs to push off the robot at the last second before he fell, managing to at least get closer to the zero-pointer's head. Unfortunately, he was definitely too far to grab onto it, but that wasn't the point. And let your heart cry out? Izuku pulled back his fist as the energy coursing through ripped his sleeve. Smash. With that, Izuku punched the side of the zero-pointer's head. And by punch, I mean pulverized. The massive robot crumpled under the sudden force, practically flying into the building to its left, explosions coursing throughout its body. The examinees went bug-eyed. Most of the teachers in the viewing area did too, save for one skeletal man who grinned victoriously. However, Izuku was far from feeling victorious. My arm. I'm falling. He clutched his flapping appendage, tearing up from the vicious pain. Can't rely on the Sharingan to get me out of this. Even if I land on my feet or roll, I'll probably get paralyzed or die. Maybe I can slow my fall with a New Hampshire smash, just like All Might. He pulled his other arm back and braced himself for the pain. Not as painful, but wow, that stings. Before he could fire his attack, Izuku was slapped in midair by the same nice girl from before. His descent instantly slowed, coming to a halt a couple of feet above the ground. I'm alive? The girl lowered the robot head she used to fly to save the falling boy and tapped her fingers together with great effort, exhaustion and nausea catching up to her. Our release. The levitating boy promptly hit the ground face first. Ow, the irony. Standing up slowly, gingerly cradling his shattered right arm, Izuku approached his savior. Hey, are you okay? She smiled up at him before clapping her hands over her mouth while her cheeks puffed. Izuku managed to turn just in time not to see anything, although he certainly heard everything. That's almost impressive. So you're not okay? Izuku asked, still facing away. She giggled sheepishly as she slowly landed on the ground and leaned on the robot head, not wanting to put weight on her damaged ankle. Sorry about that. My quirk makes me sick if I overdo it. But what about you? That arm looks bad. Izuku chuckled sheepishly, sorry about that. I think I overdid it too. Huh, I guess we match then. She exclaimed all bubbly-like. Izuku's face reddened. Oh god, she's acting cute too. I can't deal with this. I'm Uraraka, by the way. Ochako Uraraka. What's your name? She smiled at Izuku, only making him more flushed. He started sweating profusely. Aizawa Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Uraraka. Then he remembered how he survived his fall. Oh, and thanks for, saving my life. Uraraka chuckled. I should be thanking you. The way you took down that robot was all BIM and POW and BO. It was so cool. I can't believe someone with a quirk like yours even needs to take the entrance exam. You should be a shoo-in for a recommendation. Heh, why you think so, huh? She's complimenting me? Now what do? I need a distraction like now. Yes. Well done. Here, have some candy. Yes. Good job. Is that? Recovery girl strolled through the crowd of examinees that gathered to see the person who destroyed the kaiju. She approached Izuku and Uraraka. Looks like you're a suitable vessel for now. Still needs work. I just hope you don't make a habit out of this. Oh dear, your own quirk did this to you? Recovery girl said as she kissed Izuku with those frightening grandma lips. Best not to put any more attention on this kid and let all those other students know we've met before. Oh, thank you, Izuku said, bowing as his art set itself back with a green glow. Oh, it's no trouble. Now, let's see about fixing that ankle, Missy. While recovery leg kissed Uraraka's leg, Izuku sighed sadly. Even with all that training, I still didn't get enough points. But he looked at Uraraka, who was already looking at him. She waved, which naturally sent Izuku into a blushing panic. However, he still smiled, albeit sadly. I guess it was for a good cause though. 1 week later, Izuku stared at the fisheye. The fisheye stared back. He examined the subtle way the ocular organ conveyed its sheen, the delicate membrane coating the iris, the subtle browning caused by browning it in the fish oven, the black-like blackness of its pupil, the deep and rich cream-colored. Izuku! The voice of Inko Midoriya broke the young boy's concentration. What? Mom. Inko stared worriedly at her son from across the dinner table. Why were you staring at your fish? Should I be concerned, honey? Izuku laughed nervously. Sorry, Mom. I think I'm just tired is all. Dinner continued in relative silence. So did washing the dishes. Even Izuku's post-dinner bicep curls were carried out in unbroken silence. Aizu Izuku. They were carried out being the operative phrase. Izuku turned to his mother, who was kneeling and holding out a light blue envelope. It's here, Izuku. Your letter from you. He looked at the envelope and nodded, taking it into his room and closing the door. His mother paced nervously outside. Izuku laid the envelope on his desk flat and just looked at it. This is it. My rejection. I know I did well on the written exam, but with the practical, everything that All Might worked so hard for, wasted. No wonder he hasn't contacted me since. He probably found out how bad I did. Well, time to get this over with. Izuku muttered as he ripped the envelope open. As he did so, a small metal disc fell out and immediately began projecting. I am here as a hologram. Izuku's jaw dropped. All Might? The hologram of the symbol of peace laughed merrily. Huh. You're probably confused as to why I'm in your UA letter right now, but that's because I'm going to be a teacher next year. Isn't that exciting, young Midoriya? Izuku's jaw dropped even further. No way. But then he remembered his exam score and looked at the ground again. Too bad I won't be around to see that. A voice off-screen muttered something, and All Might's sweat dropped. Wrap it up? But I have so much more to tell him. The voice, likely a producer, muttered something else and All Might sighed. Very well. Just make sure to cut this part out. Anyways, young Midoriya, as you're likely well aware, you passed the written portion, but you only got 18 villain points in the practical exam. Unfortunately, that's not enough to pass. Izuku nodded sadly, his eyes welling up. I knew that already. I knew I didn't get in. So why does this hurt so badly? Luckily, there's more to it than that. Izuku looked up. What? All Might laughed. If you would, please look at this recording. He pressed a button on a remote and a screen appeared behind him. He pressed another button and a video feed started. Izuku immediately recognized Present Mic and Uraraka? What's she doing in my video? Uraraka approached Present Mic. Excuse me? Mr. Present Mic? The pro hero turned to the young girl. What's up, listener? She fidgeted. You know that curly-haired boy? Kinda plain looking? I heard him say that he didn't get enough points. But he only got injured 'cause he was saving me. So I was wondering if I could give him some of my points. At least the ones he lost because of me. Please. Uraraka bowed her head slightly. Izuku's eyes widened. She gave me her points? Present Mic just chuckled in the video and placed a reassuring hand on Uraraka's head. While I love your fiery spirit, young listener, I'm afraid I can't transfer points. But you don't gotta worry about him, believe me. The video feed shut off and All Might looked straight at Izuku, or at least the camera, inspiring acts of selflessness in others. What kind of hero school would we be if we ignored an ability like that? That's why there's a secret component to the practical exam, rescue points. Izuku's heart fluttered. Wait, does he say? A panel of 6 judges rated you all from 1 to 10 on how heroic your performance in the practical was. And you, young Midoriya, earned 60 rescue points. 60 points? All Might grinned. While we're at it, 45 to Ochako Uraraka. This places her at 4th overall and you, young Midoriya? Well, I'll let the leaderboard speak for itself. The hologram changed to the complete list of exam scores. Izuku's eyes trailed up and down the list until something clicked. 78 points total. That's above Uraraka. Bakugo got 2nd? Cool. But he had 77 points, which means... Holy shit. Izuku whispered. All Might's voice sounded, haha. Yes, young Midoriya, you got 1st in the exam. Congratulations on getting the top score, my boy. That means you pass with flying colors. Izuku's eyes started tearing up and he remembered everything he endured. The years of torment, discrimination, and worst of all, pity. All of that had led to this. All Might reappeared and extended his hand out. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. On the other end of the door, Inko was about to burst in, the suspense eating away at her. Before she could do so, however, she nearly had a heart attack when Izuku opened the door first and enveloped her in a massive hug. Mom. I got in. I got the top score. Inko gasped with joy, a small waterfall erupting from each eye. Oh, Izu. Then she fainted. Later that night, Toshinori Yagi watched the moonlight reflect on the softly rippling ocean surface. The sound of a young couple laughing at a nearby gazebo on the pier filled the air. So peaceful. Toshinori thought to himself, letting the fresh air fill his damaged lungs. All Might. The disguised symbol of peace spat out blood like a geyser. Who's that? The couple in the background suddenly started yelling, All Might? Where? All Might hissed at Izuku, Sage my bad. I was seeing things. Izuku nodded, oh my bad. I was seeing things. The couple let out a disappointed groan and went back to their date. All Might just sighed. So much for peaceful. He held up his hand. Congrats on making it into UA. Izuku smiled and high-fived him. Thanks. Though I was surprised that you're gonna be teaching there, especially since your official office is in Minato Ward Dash. All Might lightly chopped his protege's head. Stop it. Izuku rubbed his head sheepishly. Sorry. He then added, just so you know, I didn't tell any judges about you being my successor. I figured you'd think that'd be like cheating. Oh, thank you. All Might continued. I originally planned on coming to UA to find a successor. But since I found you first, I decided to take the job anyways, so I could monitor your progress. Izuku smiled, but looked down. You've done, and you're still doing, so much for me. But even after all that training, my arm was useless after using one for all just once. I'm a pretty poor excuse for a successor. Nonsense. All Might chastised, you only received my power that very day. Even I didn't adjust that quickly. You're only barely capable of containing one for all for now. All Might picked up a few empty cans off the sand. But as you grow and temper yourself, you'll be able to control it much better and make it into a real force for good. To prove this point, All Might transformed partway through his sentence and crushed the cans. Wow, it really is All Might. The couple behind them cried out. Shit. Come, young Midoriya. Let's run. Deku, let's talk. Izuku's blood ran cold. Oh god, he's going to kill me. Is this about the exam? Bakugo approached Izuku, taking slow and deliberate steps. The exam? It is. Izuku's face contorted with panic. I saw the results from the practical. The blonde boy stopped only a foot away from Izuku and whispered, his face shadowed by the poor street lighting, how did you cheat? Izuku's terrified expression gave way to one of confusion. Huh? Cheat? A car drove by, its headlights momentarily lightening Bakugo's face. Needless to say, whatever joy Izuku felt about his day went out the window. I said, how the fuck did you cheat? Bakugo seized Izuku's jacket and pushed him against a wall, his hands ominously smoking. There's no goddamn way a quirkless loser like you could have beaten my score. Izuku started panicking again and he waved his hands, and no, wait Kaken. I didn't cheat, I swear. I only beat a couple of robots. You saw I only had 18 villain points. And even then, most of those were because one of their missile launchers went haywire. Really, I didn't do that well compared to you. If it wasn't for rescue points, I wouldn't have even gotten in. I didn't try to beat your score, I swear. Bakugo's hands stopped smoking, implying he was somewhat happier about the situation, but his hold didn't ease up. Damn it, damn it. I don't give a fuck how many of what you got. I was supposed to be the only one who got in from our school. Me. He looked down and started shaking. My plans, ruined. All because of you. You just love shoving your nose where it don't belong, don't cha? Bakugo's mind flashed back to when he fell into a creek as a child. He remembered how he'd laughed it off, but Deku approached him with an outstretched hand and a look. Those eyes, so full of pity. For me. And again with that villain. Those stupid eyes. Even now. Bakugo looked up and sure enough, Deku's eyes were filled with fear, panic, but also a little bit of pity and concern. Is he okay? I know his ego is bigger than MT Lady, but this is worse than normal. I guess he really puts a lot of pressure on himself to be the best. But Bakugo saw it another way. Deku, quirkless Deku, feels bad for me? Worries about me? Fuck that. Izuku yelped as Bakugo's grip tightened and his eyes flared. Listen Deku, I'm gonna be the #1 hero someday, so stop looking at me like that and stop getting in my fucking way. He threw Izuku to the ground and stormed off in a huff. Don't let me see you at you, got it? Or better yet, just drop out altogether. Not like a quirkless Deku could ever be a real hero. Bakugo started walking back home, only to stop dead when Izuku shouted, Kaken. Izuku was standing back up, fists clenched tightly. But more impressively, he was staring his childhood friend dead on, mouth set in a determined line. Someone told me that I could be a hero. It's because of them that I've gotten this far. Izuku looked at his clenched right fist and remembered that punch he delivered against the zero-pointer. He looked back at Bakugo and exclaimed, I can't let them down now. I have to keep going, whether you want me to or not. Bakugo stood in stunned silence before continuing his walk home. Izuku kept up his brave facade until his friend turned the corner and vanished from sight, at which point he promptly deflated. Oh wow. I can't believe I stood up to Kaken. I guess today was pretty good after all. Meanwhile, Bakugo was lost in thought. Since when did Deku get the balls to talk back? What a prick. Then he flashed back to when Izuku offered him that hand up when they were kids or when he shielded Bakugo's body from the sludge villain's attacks. And then he reflected on what he said to Izuku earlier that fateful day. Maybe you'll be lucky and be reborn with a quirk in your next life. Bakugo sighed, looked at his feet. Shit. 2 weeks later. You have your pocket tissues? Yeah. Izuku knelt down to his laces. And your handkerchief? Your hanky? No. I gotta hurry or I'll be late. Izuku finished tying his shoes, smoothed out his uniform, and opened the door. Oh, and Izuku? Exasperated, Izuku turned from the doorframe and whined. What? Inko just smiled through glossy eyes. You're really cool. Taken aback, Izuku smiled gratefully. I'll see you later. From his home, it was about 40 minutes by train to UA. The entire ride, he could feel himself shaking, the reality of his situation slowly dawning on him. I know I've been before to see Recovery Girl, but I'm about to attend the top hero school in the country. Standing in front of the gates certainly felt different this time around. No more waiting for All Might to secure a visitor's badge. Armed with his student ID, that most mighty of weapons, Izuku strolled through the gates with confidence. Which, for him, means that he didn't trip, cry, fall, spontaneously combust, blush, sweat, die, cry, mutter, or cry. Okay, he did tear up a little bit. This campus is massive. Class 1, where are you? Izuku strolled around the hallways of one of the towers, doing his best to follow the signs before he came face to face with a door fitting the campus's size. It's huge, but this says 1A on it. He took a deep breath. The rest of your life begins right now. He opened the door. I just hope Kakin and that scary guy from the exam aren't in my class. Or that one French guy. Get your feet off of that desk. That's disrespectful to the carpenters who slaved over its craftsmanship and to our elders who learned from there. Well, that's only 1 out of 3. I can handle that. From inside the classroom, Izuku vaguely heard someone twinkle. Isn't my belt so magnifique? Okay, 66.7% isn't bad. Besides, those two are mild compared to... You talk funny. Were you from Extra? Correct. The tall boy with glasses stood up proudly to answer Baku. My name is Tenya Ida. I attended Some Academy for junior high. But my family and I are originally Fr-. Bakugo grinned maliciously. Oh, a Some kid? Didn't realize you were an elite. Maybe I should just blow you away right now and save myself the trouble later. The tall boy stepped back, completely aghast. W? Are you sure you're trying to be a hero? Then he noticed Izuku standing, or more accurately, shaking by the entrance. Oh, it's you. He walked over in a fashion that was also somehow running and gave a slight bow. I know we met once before, but I am pleased to make your acquaintance again. My name is Dash. Izuku sweat a little bit, but bowed in return. Oh, I already heard. My name's Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you too, Ida. Bakugo narrowed his eyes, but looked away without giving much acknowledgement. Some of the people in the classroom who overheard turned towards him now. Wait, Izuku Midoriya? Didn't he get the top score on the practical? Someone with spiky blonde hair with a black streak asked. A girl with pink hair and skin and 2 angled horns replied, Oh yeah, I think you're right. Man, with a point total like that, I bet he's got a crazy strong quirk. A student with spiked red hair looked like he was about to cry, despite the massive smile on his face. Wow. I bet he's so manly. In the back of the classroom, a kid with evenly split red and white hair, heterochromia, and a large pink scar over his left eye glanced up. He zeroed in on his classmate's target of conversation and narrowed his eyes. Top score, huh? Ida suddenly slammed his fist on his other hand, like a judge's gavel. Midoriya, you easily ascertained the true purpose of the exam, didn't you? Yet I judged you harshly beforehand. How foolish of me. Please, accept my humble apologies, for you are certainly the superior candidate. Izuku waved his hands frantically. And no, I didn't ascertain anything, I promise. I know he's complimenting me, but he's so intense that I still feel scared. Oh, it's Izuku. Izuku turned and nearly turned into a tomato. Uraraka? First name basis? Uraraka smiled, highlighting her natural blush. Wow. I was hoping you'd get in, and then I saw your name at the top of the chart and I was like, wow. He looked away with a sheepish smile. Oh, well, I should really be thanking you since you went to talk to Present Mike and all. She cocked her head. Huh? How'd you know about that? His face lost all color. Luckily, a distraction came in the form of a giant caterpillar. If you're here to socialize, you should just leave. This is the hero course at UA, not some public high school in Tokyo. Everyone slowly turned to face the interruption, looks of confusion, fear, a bit of interest plaguing their expressions. The caterpillar sighed and began to unzip itself, revealing a tall, lanky man and a large sleeping bag. It took you a whole 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is precious, and you just wasted mine. You guys aren't too bright, are you? Izuku turned his head slightly. This guy, he looks familiar, but I can't remember from where. The mystery man pulled out a juice box and in one mighty gulp, finished it and threw it away. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you. The yellow-haired kid from earlier chuckled and whispered, I don't think he means that. Izuku's brow furrowed. If he's our homeroom teacher, then he must be a pro hero. But I don't remember seeing him on TV or anything. I'll have to check my journals later to be sure. Aizawa reached inside his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue uniform with white lettering and red trim. Put these on and meet me out on the practice field. All Might peered over the class files, searching for the first sign of young Midoriya's name. Let's see, Class 1A nice. Young Uraraka is in there too. I'm sure they'll get along well. Young Bakugo, though, might be trouble based on young Midoriya's anecdotes. But the homeroom teacher is? All Might's eyes widened and he nearly spat blood. Oh shit. Aizawa cracked his neck. Alright. Since you're all finally here, we can start the quirk apprehension test. The class gathered at the training field, all sweat dropped. Uraraka protested. What? A test on the first day? What about orientation and the school assembly and dash? Aizawa cut her off. You gives me a lot of freedom on how to teach. If you want to waste your time on petty stuff like that, feel free to go now. I'll fill out your expulsion form in the meantime. Uraraka immediately went quiet and even stepped back. Izuku's sweat dropped. So intimidating. Aizawa continued, you all had to do physicals and fitness tests in junior high, but you could never use your quirks. Just another example of the subpar government at work. But if I'm going to teach you anything, I need to know where you're all at right now. So you're going to use your quirks freely to complete all these tests. He looked at his clipboard. Bakugo, you had the most villain points on the practical by a long shot. I want you to throw this as far as you can. Aizawa handed Bakugo a softball with a band of sensors embedded around it. Bakugo wordlessly took the ball and walked to the throwing circle. He wound up and roared as he threw it with a literal bang. Die. Izuku paled. The ball rocketed through the air and out of sight, the only indication it landed being a beep on Aizawa's monitoring device. He held it out. See that? That's a hero score. A short kid with purple balls protruding from his head nearly shrieked. 705.2 meters? That's insane. The pink girl from earlier beamed. Wow, this kinda looks fun. A guy with black hair, a permanent grin, and cylinders on his arm laughed. And we get to use our quirks completely. This'll be a breeze. Aizawa grinned, but it made the room feel colder. Fun? A breeze? Since you're already taking this so lightly, let's raise the stakes. Lowest score is expelled. Capice? I, and the rest of this school, are going to beat you down until you can barely move, all to make you better heroes. If you can't withstand that, you're out. That's what it means to go plus ultra. Everyone just stood in shock, save for Bakugo, the half-and-half boy from earlier, and a mature-looking woman with spiky black hair. Aizawa then listed off the events and with each pronouncement, Izuku felt his spirits fall. This is bad. One for all is basically a glass cannon right now and the Sharingan's gonna be useless on most of these. Maybe it'll help on the long jump for technique or ball toss for the angle of my throw, but that's not gonna mean anything compared to what some of these guys can do. I just need to power through on my own abilities. If only it were that simple. The 50-meter sprint went decently, but Izuku still placed 10th, right behind some huge guy that inhaled a cinnamon roll before running so hard he cracked the ground. But that still wasn't as weird as the tall girl, who pulled a skateboard from under her shirt and rode that to a comfortable 5.65 second time. I have so many questions I want to ask her. He felt the reflexive urge to grab his notebook. For the grip strength test, he only managed 56 kilograms of pressure. while in the top 10 again, his score was dwarfed by the multi-limbed man's score of 540 kilograms. Okay, I'm not doing bad, but I'm not doing great either. Maybe I can raise my score now though. Sharingan, Izuku whispered. He felt his quirk activate and he started observing the others who went before him. Maybe I can learn something from the others, he muttered while tracing their movements. I can't shoot a laser beam, so that's a no-go. Also can't create explosions, so can't copy that. Oh, the pink-haired girl walked up to the starting line. If I remember, she did really well in the 50-meter dash. She also looks athletic. Maybe I can find something out from her. He watched her lead up and jump carefully, even paying close attention to her form in mid-air and her landing. She's faster than me on the run up to the jump point, but I should actually be able to push off harder than her. And none of her movements were too out of my ability, so I can do this. I could even spot the ideal location to jump from, so I could surpass her distance too. Oh, is that your quirk, Izuku? Uraraka asked loudly while moving much too close, observing his red eyes. Immediately, much of the class turned towards him, interested in the top candidate's quirk. Luckily, the surprise made Izuku reflexively deactivate his quirk. She's so close to me. And everyone keeps trying to measure me up. And I could honestly go without Kaken blowing up at me again. Wait, did I ever even tell him I had a quirk? On cue, Bakugo also looked at Midoriya, albeit more so because he was confused about what drugs Uraraka was taking. Deku's quirkless, dumbass. Izuku's sweat dropped. No, I did not. Ida raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about, Bakugo? Did you not hear about Midoriya's feat against the zero-pointer in the exam? What are you talking about, extra? Before the argument could progress, Aizawa interrupted. Midoriya, you're up. Izuku walked up to the line and activated his Sharingan while lining up his jump. Well, nothing to do except pray he doesn't see them. Heh, I don't need to get emasculated on my first day at school. He inhaled deeply before taking off at a sprint and leaping at the perfect moment. He soared through the air with perfect form and even landed gracefully. He looked at the ruler next to the sand pit where he landed and smiled. Yes. Not too bad. I'm definitely in the top 5. He wasn't. The guy with multiple limbs/tentacles used the membranes connecting his arms to glide over the pit with surprising grace for someone so large. The large guy ate a brownie this time and jumped over the pit entirely. The person with the ice quirk just created an ice bridge and walked over the pit. I know I'm passing, but... Izuku looked at Bakugo, who was already glaring at him. He reflexively stepped back, but maintained eye contact, despite the trembling in his hands and the sweat pooling down his brow. Just don't look away. Remember, you have 2 quirks now. You're at UA now, so don't be afraid to stare back at him. This is a weird pep talk. The repeated sidesteps went about as well as Izuku could have hoped. Despite trying to mimic the pink girl again, he ended up getting dizzy and falling on his butt, earning the second worst score, only above the multi-limbed guy who basically just shuffled from side to side like an awkward middle school dance. Sucks that he's so big he basically straddled the area that Aizawa-sensei gave us. The ball throwing was where Izuku's nerves got the better of him, especially after seeing Uraraka throw an infinity. Everyone has at least one incredible score, and after my last event, I need all the points I can get. Even if it breaks my arm, I need to do this. So when Izuku got called to the plate, he immediately whispered, Sharingan, and started charging up one for all. Uraraka whispered, Izuku's not doing so well, is he? At least compared to what his score was. Ida commented, yes, but am very intrigued to see Midoriya's performance in this event given the power he displayed in that attack against the arena trap. Although it did damage him severely, so perhaps he has been saving that strength. Bakugo just stared at the two in complete disbelief. Please. Deku only passed 'cause of those stupid rescue points. He doesn't have what it takes to pass this test. Meanwhile, Izuku was marveling at himself. I can actually see my own life force getting brighter and brighter with my Sharingan as I charge one for all. He pulled his hand back and started the wind-up. The ideal angle for distance is 45 degrees, so I need to move my hand in exactly this way to get that done. Izuku visualized his throw and with his natural quirk's ability, executed it. Egg in the microwave, shorten the cook time, lower the wattage. His arm rippled with red and green lines, electricity crackling through his veins. I can feel it. It's not as bad as before. However, right as he threw the ball, he felt the floodgates open and the full force of his second quirk rushed into his arm. Izuku thought as he threw the ball. 46 meters. His face dropped. No way. Bakugo smirked and turned to Ida. See? Quirkless Deku. However, Aizawa settled the debate then and there by wrapping his scarf around Izuku and pulling him closer. I erased your quirk. Izuku noticed his teacher's eyes were glowing red and his hair was standing up. And that with the scarf unfurled, Izuku saw that Aizawa had a pair of yellow goggles around his neck. Then it clicked. Why Eraserhead? An underground hero. Izuku exclaimed, surprised at the development. While his classmates mumbled about the revelation, Aizawa spoke loudly and harshly. You know why I called for Bakugo to do the demonstration and not you? Because if it were up to me, you'd never have gotten the top score. Izuku paled. Huh? Aizawa continued, your perception and analysis against the small fries was impressive, sure, but half of your villain points were from dumb luck and a glitchy robot. You didn't even use your quirk. If it were up to me, you wouldn't have gotten those 9 points. And you destroyed that giant robot, sure. But in the process, you not only destroyed a building, but you trashed your arm. If Uraraka hadn't saved you, you'd probably have died or messed up your body further with your quirk. I don't need amateurs who can't control their quirks in my class. Bakugo's eyes narrowed with each word. Is he seriously saying that Deku has a quirk? Has he been lying to me all these years? Aizawa procured another ball and handed it to Izuku, his eyes returning to normal as his hair set and he rewound his scarf. You can try once more. Go all out and destroy your chances in the next 3 events or hold back and not get a single hero-level score. Izuku was left stunned and silent. Ida and Uraraka watched solemnly. The latter spoke first. Looks like Aizawa-sensei really tore into Izuku. I hope he figures something out. Ida nodded. If Midoriya is unable to somehow live up to Aizawa-sensei's expectations for this event, I fear that he may face severe consequences. If he can't control his quirk, though, it might be best if he didn't progress any further, as harsh as it sounds. Everyone turned to look at the speaker, the tall girl with the spiky ponytail. In this line of work, you can't rely on others to pick up your slack. You need to be a self-sufficient hero on your own. And if using his quirk once really damaged him as much as Aizawa-sensei says it did, then he might simply not be able to be a hero. Izuku felt his heart sink as he overheard his new classmate speak. What do I do? I wasn't able to pump the brakes on One for All on my last throw, but if I don't use it, I'll be the only student without at least 1 crazy high score. Sharingan. Izuku muttered as he began charging One for All, watching how the power grew in his right arm. I can literally see it with my Sharingan. It's like electricity. Wait a minute, what if I use the Sharingan to visually gauge how much I put into One for All? Izuku concentrated on pulling back his power, feeling the energy decrease in intensity, as well as seeing the glow of his arm drop in luminosity. Okay, that looks good. The bright light's only about half as much as it used to be. And maybe, to minimize the damage just in case, he wound up and tossed the ball with all his might. But the second the ball was about to leave his grasp, he shifted all of One for All into his hand and roared, smash. The soft ball shot off into the sky, producing small airbursts with its incredible speed. Izuku smiled, but immediately clutched his hand, which was slightly red and appeared a little misshapen. Damn it. 50% is still way too much. I wanted to put in all into my index finger, but using the Sharingan to adjust my trajectory made it too hard to also shift One for All at the same time. But I can tell, this isn't nearly as bad as before. I have a few fractures, but, Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa turned from the score of 535.5 meters and looked at his student, who wore a pleased grin. I can still move. He clenched his fist slightly to prove it. The underground hero just stared at the kid for a while. He localized the power into his hand instead of his arm. Furthermore, it doesn't look bloody or limp like it did against the arena trap. He not only reduced the area of damage, but he managed to regulate his power on the fly. This kid, Aizawa just grinned. Uraraka cheered while Ida nodded repeatedly. Even. The tall girl seemed slightly taken aback. Never mind then. Bakugo, however, looked someone just told him his puppy died, as they killed it in front of him. Deku has a quirk? Quirkless Deku has a quirk. Then Izuku turned back to the students and Bakugo saw those red eyes, the tomo still spinning. Bakugo shot off towards his classmate, blinded by his rage/insecurities. What? You thought your quirk was so cool that you kept it hidden? Is that it? I don't need your PA. Bakugo suddenly felt the familiar heat in his palms vanish as several strands of suspiciously hard cloth wrapped around his body, locking him in place. Aizawa's glowing eyes glared. Cut it out. Another outburst like that and you're expelled. Got it? He then released Bakugo and deactivated his quirk, dropping some liquid into his eyes. You kids are gonna be the death of me. My quirk gives me serious dry eye. But his quirk is so cool. Everyone's sweat dropped at the revelation of his weakness. Bakugo glared at Izuku again but turned away in a huff. Izuku looked back, his heart still racing from when he thought Bakugo was gonna flatten him. Aizawa sighed, now that that's done, let's keep going. Yaoyorozu, can you make a splint for Midoriya? The tall girl, Yaoyorozu, nodded before pulling a hand brace out from under her shirt. She walked over to Izuku and sternly asked, would you like some help putting it on? Izuku's face was redder than his eyes due to her close proximity, but he managed to squeak, Weiss, please. Choosing to ignore his timid behavior, she softly wrapped the brace around his right hand and secured it snugly. All done. Izuku examined the splint. Thank you, Yaoyorozu. She gave a soft smile, breaking her serious facade. Of course. As classmates, it's important we support each other. And I might have spoken too harshly. Then she walked back to the crowd, loosely followed by Izuku. Midoriya, that result was most impressive. Ida pronounced, chopping his hands rapidly. Uraraka bubbly nodded, encroaching on her new friend's space. Yeah, that WS so cool. You were all smash and then the ball went whoosh and dashed. Izuku zoned out the second she started talking and started blushing again. I need to stop associating with pretty girls. It just doesn't end well for me. In the background, behind a nearby building, All Might watched the scene with a smile. I was worried about you, young Midoriya, but wow, do you love crushing my expectations. When did you become so cool? All Might also noticed his pupil's red face and the Uraraka's poor awareness of personal space. And popular with the ladies, too? You never cease to amaze me. The rest of the events fared moderately well for Izuku. The seated toe touch was easy since he did so much agility training while learning to use his Sharingan. He scored 5th, behind Yaoyorozu, the boy with the tail. Izuku suspected it was due to his martial arts background based on how he keyed every time he did anything, the frog girl, and the same pink girl he copied so much. He actually excelled at the sit-ups, managing to finally place in the top 3, only behind Yaoyorozu and the guy that looked like he was split in half. The pull-ups, however, were a different story. Despite the brace, he couldn't use his right hand at all and he had to do the exercise with one arm. He only beat out the kid with purple balls on his head after totally exhausting himself. Finally, the endurance run came around and Izuku was able to reclaim his momentum by placing 5th. If my hand wasn't throbbing so much, I probably could have done a lot more. I wasn't even that tired. At the end, Aizawa gathered everyone and showed the results on a screen. Izuku feared the worst, but nearly sobbed when he saw his name in 12th place. I made it, but Kaken got 3rd. Damn it, I'm still behind him. A high-pitched shriek interrupted Izuku's giddiness. I'm gonna be expelled. And I haven't even copped a feel yet. Izuku's sweat dropped at the purple ball-haired kid's choice of words. I guess that's my neta. Ida nodded vigorously. How tragic to be expelled on his very first day of high school. Truly, UA earns its title as the premier hero course. By the way, I lied about the whole expulsion thing. After sending off his justifiably peeved class to change, and Midoriya to recovery girl afterwards, Aizawa walked back to the homeroom, only to hear a familiar and his opinion, annoying laugh. Haha, Aizawa, you said the expulsion threat was just a trick, but April Fool's was last week. Aizawa sighed. What do you want, All Might? All Might's sweat dropped at the rude reception, but continued, you've expelled over 100 students in your career at this school. So pray tell, Why the sudden change in modus operandi? Eraserhead shrugged. The only one I actually would have expelled was Midoriya, but he managed to improve my opinion of him. Slightly. Then you see it too. Young Midoriya's potential is overflowing. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Too? All Might immediately sweat dropped. It's just that he only recently learned he had a quirk. So I hear, and to see him improve so quickly is rather impressive, no? Nailed it. All Might, you're too smooth. Something's up, whatever. If that's true, then I'll admit I had him pegged wrong. And I won't say he's completely devoid of potential, but regardless of his scores, he's still a glass cannon. And I won't humor anybody like that. The only thing crueler than stomping out a dream early is letting it continue too long. His mind flashed to a broken body under the rubble of an overpass. I won't accept anything like that again. Later that day. Midoriya, is your hand healed? Ida called as they crossed the UA gates to go home. Izuku turned and smiled. Oh, Ida. Yeah, recovery girl healed it in a few seconds, flat. I just have to keep the brace Yaoyorozu made for the rest of the day and I should be good as new. Ida smiled. Good? I'm pleased to hear that you weren't permanently injured. Such a tragedy on your first would only serve to sour your high school experience. Izuku laughed sheepishly. I thought Ida was kinda mean and scary, but he's just really genuine and earnest. I can appreciate that. Hey Deku. Izuku nearly vomited as he turned in a panic. K Kaken? His voice sounds way higher than it used to, and more feminine, and Baukneer. That wasn't Kaken. As luck would have it, it was just Uraraka. Huh? Kaken? Isn't that your name for Bakugo? Izuku chuckled sheepishly. Why? Sorry, but he's really the only one who calls me Deku, so I thought it was him. Why Deku? Is that some sort of inside joke? WL, it's sort of a different way to read the kanji for my name and it means useless, so... Uraraka flinched. I thought that was like a friendly nickname or something. Sorry about that. What part of our interactions seemed friendly? Izuku's sweat dropped. But then she bounced up and grinned, but I kinda like the sound of it, you know? Sounds like decisive. Has a real never give up kind of vibe, you know? You can call me D. Izuku's cheeks flared up and a smile ripped across his face. I feel reborn. Ida gasped. Midoriya? You shouldn't give in to peer pressure so quickly. Izuku buried his face in his hands and muttered, I don't know what's happening anymore. There's so many people talking to me right now. And that was the moment Izuku realized he had friends. The next day seemed almost insulting compared to the first one. Instead of an emotionally and physically grueling exam, the students of Class 1A had to endure the very worst thing imaginable to a high school student, learning. Even present Mike, with his infectious enthusiasm and permagrin, couldn't bring life to A Midsummer Night's Dream. Izuku certainly wasn't helped by the fact that Mineta, who sat behind him, kept whispering how awesome it was that the R-rated hero, Midnight, was their biology teacher. Seriously, Midoriya? Just imagine how hot it'll be when she covers meiosis. Mineta shuddered in delight, leaving one very flustered greenette contemplating his life choices. But after lunch, everyone in the class was excited because their schedule listed, in bolded lettering, battle training. And the teacher for that day's session was coming through the door like a normal person, All Might clad in his Silver Age costume complete with flapping and entirely useless cape, appeared in a flash, leaning into the classroom while gripping the doorframe behind him for support. There was a moment of stunned silence before the class erupted into cheers. All Might Sensei, you're so cool and manly, the spiky-haired boy exclaimed. The twinkling boy sparkled. Monsieur All Might Sensei's cape is au magnifique. And despite having seen All Might almost daily for a year, even Izuku was swept up by the class's fervor. All Might Sensei, I'm your biggest fan. All Might let out a booming laugh. Ha! I'm glad to see that you're all excited. I'm certainly excited myself to be your teacher, so let's all get along. But how about we just jump right into it? All Might pressed a button on the teacher's desk, causing a section of the left wall to extend outwards, revealing 4 columns of 5 suitcases, each numbered 1 through 20. These are the costumes you specifically requested. We had our support company use the information you provided and what we found from the quirk registry build you the perfect outfits. Please put them on and meet me on ground beta. While everyone else swarmed their suitcases, eager to see their very own supersuits, Izuku stayed at his desk to open his backpack first and pull out an old grocery bag, carefully tied so as not to free the precious cargo inside. Then he gathered his suitcase and went to the locker room. This represents my mom's faith in me. I can't wear anything else. So with that, Izuku finished putting on his costume, featuring his mother's homemade jumpsuit and the support company's mask and padding, and walked out with his classmates, while All Might whistled and complimented them. Nice. You all look like proper heroes. Then he noticed Izuku's mouth guard and rabbit ears, so obvious. But the light green and white combo is an interesting choice. He cleared his throat. Anyways, we'll be conducting battle trials in teams of 2. One group will play the role of heroes, while the other will play as villains. All Might pulled out a cheat sheet, much to everyone's amusement. Ahem. The scenario is that the villains have a nuclear warhead somewhere in the building to my left. The heroes have to infiltrate the building and secure the weapon and/or capture the villains. The villains will receive a 5-minute head start while the heroes get 15 minutes to complete their objective. The symbol of peace then pulled out his phone. I've already used a random number generator to assign teams. They are as follows. Team A, Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka. Uraraka cheered and got too close to Izuku again. Yay. We're on the same team. Must be fate. Izuku looked away with a wicked blush but nodded. Team B, Shoto Todoroki and Mizo Shoji. Team C, Minoru Mineta and Momo Yaoyorozu. Team D, Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida. Bakugo raised an eyebrow. Who? Ida just gasped, affronted. Team E, Mina Ishido and Yuga Aoyama. Team F, Rikido Sato and Koji Koda. Team G, Jiro Kyoka and Denki Kaminari. Team H, Fumikage Tokoyami and Tsuyu Ajui. Team I, Mashareo Ojiro and Toru Hagakure. Team J, Ejiro Kirishima and Hantasiro. All Might took a deep breath. That was a lot. And these lottery machines will decide the matchups. All Might gestured to 2 lottery ball drawing machines labeled hero and villain, respectively. Izuku started sweating. Just not Kaken's team. Anything but Kaken's team. He picked out the first set. Looks like round 1 is Team A versus Team D. Oh shit, sorry young Midoriya. Izuku nearly fainted. Izuku tapped his hand nervously, muttering so furiously, the author couldn't even condense it into written language. Deku? Uraraka asked, smiling despite the sweat drop. You okay? Izuku broke out of his stupor and chuckled sheepishly. Sorry about that. I guess I'm just nervous about facing Kaken. Uraraka nodded understandingly. I guess I can't blame you. He bullied you, right? He nodded slowly, but smiled regardless. Yeah. I've always been behind him. Always scared of standing in his way. His quirk is crazy strong, and his battle instincts are probably the best in the year. But beyond that, he's just the most driven person I've ever met. I think about how powerful he is and how focused he is. I just can't help but feel inspired. Izuku turned to Uraraka with a thrilled grin. That's why today, I don't want to lose. Then he blushed. Oh, sorry to put that all on you. No, it's good. We're a team after all. Uraraka grinned back at him. So it's like a fated battle between men? She just laughed at his meek reaction. Anyways, you have any ideas on what we can do? Izuku nodded and whipped out his trusty notebook. These are the notes I took on Kaken throughout the years. And in the back, I have a few notes on Ida from watching him during Aizawa-sensei's exam. Uraraka smiled at first, but quickly paled when she realized that Ida's few notes amounted to several pages more stuffed than her freezer during a mochi sale. So thorough. Uraraka, she looked up at her partner, your quirk cancels out gravity, right? Uraraka nodded. Yeah. If I touch something with my fingertips, I can make it weightless. But I can really only lift 3 tons. Izuku's sweat dropped. That's a lot. Well, I was thinking that since Ida's quirk is all about speed and mobility, if you're able to use your quirk on him, we'd get a major advantage. Yeah, that would work. But what about you, Deku? What does your quirk do exactly? I haven't prepared for this. I can't just say I have 2 quirks. Oh. I have enhanced perception and strength and stuff. Oh, and I can trace people's movements and predict what they're going to do. Please buy it, please buy it, please buy it. Uraraka smiled curiously. Oh wow. So your eyes changing color is just a part of that. She bought it. Izuku nodded, but I can only use it for about 8 minutes straight, so I'll need to ration it out. And then I get hurt when I try to use my super strength. Uraraka scratched her head. Huh, and your quirk's so strong that you might accidentally damage the building or the bomb, and that wouldn't be good. Especially since we're supposed to pretend like we're in a real city. I guess we should try to keep fighting to the higher floors to avoid destroying the foundation below. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Wow, Uraraka. You seem pretty knowledgeable about this kind of stuff. She scratched her head. Well, my parents are construction workers, so I kinda learned a couple of things along the way. Anyways, our time's almost up, so let's get ready. She started bouncing excitedly near Izuku, which wasn't helping the poor boy given the hem design of her bodysuit. Hero team, you may enter. 15 minutes on the clock, staring now. All Might proclaimed from the viewing center. Izuku immediately called, Sharingan. His eyes lit up and the familiar slowdown effect appeared. I can see them on the 5th floor. Uraraka awed, wow. You can see through walls too? That's incredible. Izuku blushed and chuckled while turning off his Sharingan. Just living things. Anyways, you think you can lift us both to the 6th floor? She looked down. Sorry, but I can't make myself float that long. Only a couple seconds at most. Izuku smiled. No worries. We'll just have to work our way up, then. Uraraka made her partner float so he could climb to the 2nd-story window and carefully slide it open. She then jumped with the spring-loaded heels in her boots and grabbed his hand, getting pulled up onto solid ground. Izuku activated his communicator and whispered, these mics are super sensitive, so they should pick up our voices even when we're quiet. This way we can avoid making loud sounds. Uraraka nodded and activated hers as well. Can you see if Ida or Bakugo have moved at all? Izuku reactivated his Sharingan. They're still up there. They kinda look like they're arguing, though. No doubt because of Kaken. Uraraka smiled again, her infectious can-do attitude lightening the tense air. Then we need to move. Let's go. The hero team quietly worked their way up to the 3rd floor, making heavy use of the supplied blueprints to navigate the maze-like corridors and halls. Any change? Uraraka asked. Izuku checked again, but paled. It's only Ida. It's only been a few minutes. What happened? Uraraka's heart quickened. Where's Bakugo? I'm looking. Izuku quickly scanned the building. Where is he? Where is he? But. Uraraka, get down. Izuku practically tackled his partner, just in time to avoid Bakugo's swing around the corner and unleash a sizable explosion. Uraraka groaned as she sat up but gasped at the sight of Deku's torn mask and slightly red skin. Deku, are you alright? He nodded. I'm fine. You should try to get to Ida. He's probably standing guard of the bomb. I knew Kaken would come for me, so I'll stay behind to stall him. Bakugo grinned maliciously. Nice dodging, Deku, but don't get ahead of yourself. Uraraka wanted to protest, but she remembered the fire in his eyes when they were waiting to enter. Got it. Keep me posted. She ran towards the stairs to the 4th floor. Like Izuku predicted, Bakugo didn't even move to stop her, much less glance in her direction. Instead, he was transfixed on Izuku's glowing red eyes, the tomo slowly ceasing their rotation. That's your quirk, huh, Deku? Doesn't matter. It's still nothing compared to me. The spiky-haired redhead protested. A sneak attack. Bakugo's so unmanly. The pink girl laughed. But man, that Midori sure can dodge. No surprise that he was pretty acrobatic yesterday. Yaoyorozu shook her head, but he sent away Uraraka despite their strength in numbers. Does he have a plan? All Might instinctively gripped his microphone tighter as he saw the scene unfold. Young Midoriya, I know how much this means to you, but turning this exercise into a grudge match is bound to get you hurt. Bakugo charged at Izuku, swinging his right arm in a mighty haymaker. Since One for All could kill him and I don't have the time I need to regulate it, I need to rely on my base strength. Normally, I'd only be able to flip him, but with my Sharingan, Kaken, I know from analyzing the heroes I think are awesome. That dash. Izuku dashed forward and seized Bakugo's arm, securely locking his opponent's bicep against his own chest. You always lead with a right hook. Izuku rotated his hips slightly, pulling Bakugo with him. Then he used the narrow corridor to his advantage by pushing off with his foot against the wall behind him. This sent him and Bakugo into the wall in front of Izuku, where he made sure that his shoulder thoroughly sandwiched Bakugo's stomach with the concrete. Bakugo coughed, completely winded. Kaken stunned. Let's keep this up. Izuku delivered a few strong punches to Bakugo's jaw and temple before seizing his tank top and flipping Bakugo over his shoulder. However, at the last moment, Izuku jumped into the flip, speeding it up slightly, but also adding Izuku's own weight onto the attack with. Bakugo once again sandwiched between his childhood friend and a hard place. Izuku scrambled up and took a few deep breaths, winded at his own onslaught. He watched Bakugo cough and groan, his face curled into an even more impressive scowl. Kaken, I told you someone said I could be a hero. Well now, someone else told me something just as important. From now on, I'm the Deku that never gives up. Bakugo groaned weakly. All Might's jaw was on the floor. Man, young Midoriya, you are seriously awesome. The redhead was laughing. Holy crap. That was one of the manliest things I've ever seen. The boy with the big mouth and cylindrical elbows chuckled too. That was pretty cool. However, the frog girl stared curiously, but Bakugo doesn't look all that hurt. Izuku regained his breath. Kaken, I know I said I didn't want to get in your way, but... He grabbed his fallen friend's arm and pulled it up, placing his red shoe over the bare shoulder in a hold. I take it back. In this hold, I can easily dislocate Kaken's arm and then he can't fire explosions from it. It's a little brutal, but without being able to control one for all, it's the best I can do. However, he felt the arm shift slightly and before Izuku knew it, he was sent flying back a dozen feet, his chest burning. You sure love monologuing too. While his opponent struggled to stand, Bakugo got up, his face positively seething with rage. So, Deku, you think you're at my level? Don't make me laugh. Bakugo fired another explosion towards Izuku, sending the smaller boy back a few feet with some fresh burns. You and I aren't even playing the same game, damn it. Uraraka tiptoed to the nearest column, peering out slowly behind her to watch as Ida stood guard in front of the black and red papier-mâché bomb. For the seemingly dozenth time, she heard the muffled boom of Bakugo's quirk on the third floor. I hope Deku's okay. It sounds really nasty down there. Ida yelled into his communicator, Bakugo, what's going on? Bakugo? Ida growled in frustration, darn him. Running off on his own to confront them. But perhaps, maybe that's just how he embodies the role of a villain. Ida rubbed his chin, or at least the chin of his helmet, while Uraraka silently laughed nervously. I think Ida's trying to find meaning where there isn't any. The armored speedster stood up and tall and exclaimed, if that's the case, then I must similarly adopt a villain's persona. MWA ha ha ha. The overzealous laugh was too much and Uraraka burst out laughing, much to her later chagrin. Oh, Uraraka? It appears you slipped past my henchman's defenses. But no matter. I, a villain, will end your reign of goodness and joy today. MWA ha ha ha. Uraraka couldn't help but burst out laughing again, but quickly composed herself. I gave myself up. I'll have to do my best to hit him with my quirk or at least stall him until Deku gets here. Uraraka took off at a run, madly charging the bomb. However, Ida quickly picked it up and zoomed to the other end of the room. Huh? Sorry, Uraraka, but you'll have to be faster than that. Dang it. I can't get close to him without him speeding off. Deku's notes mentioned something about gears, but I got it. With that, Uraraka charged Ida again. Izuku gasped for breath, hiding behind a wall as Bakugo searched for him. This is crazy. I can't get any openings on him if he keeps using his explosions to block my line of sight. Deku, Bakugo taunted, come on. I thought you said you never give up. Izuku grit his teeth. I want to look for him, but there's still 7 minutes left and I only have 4 or 5 minutes on my Sharingan. I need more time to recharge before I found you. Bakugo roared as he popped out from another hallway about 20 feet away. Crap. Sharingan. Izuku cried as he readied himself for the inevitable onslaught. Bakugo charged but propelled himself up and over Izuku with a series of 3 quick explosions. That was too fast for the Sharingan. And he's changing his style on the fly, so my old notes are useless. Get away, get away. Izuku made a desperate attempt to jump forward, away from his assailant, but felt a white-hot burn as Bakugo fired another explosion right at his back. Then, while he was still down from the pain, Bakugo struck Izuku with his right gauntlet. Here's that hook you told me so much about, Deku. The green net fell to the ground, pain echoing throughout his body. I need to use one for all. I can't let myself lose to Kaken. Not this time. Izuku started charging his second quirk, feeling that familiar rush of power. He looked at his gloved hand, the white fabric faintly glowing from the energy beneath. Kaken's coming. No time to control the output. I'll focus it all in my palm to minimize the damage and use a Texas smash to push him away. Bakugo growled, "What? Still think you're so much better than me? Show me that power, damn it." He prepared to fire another explosion at the fallen Izuku's back, only for the latter to turn quickly and hold out his hand. Bakugo suddenly realized he'd been baited once he saw the hand glow brightly, despite the glove covering it. Shit. Bakugo held his left forearm up to defend just in time for Izuku to hit him with a palm strike. Texas smash. Izuku fully concentrated one for all into his right palm and pushed it with all his might. The glove immediately ripped apart, electricity swarming Izuku's hand. Bakugo paled as his gauntlet shook violently, lightning arcing from his opponent's hand and painfully shocking the former. Then, the gauntlet burst open and the incredible wind pressure from Izuku's attack pushed Bakugo into the wall across the hall, cracking the concrete. Izuku smiled but quickly clutched his hand in pain, the top layer of his palm's epidermis completely ripped away. I should run. This is my chance. Izuku turned away from his former friend but didn't move any further. His hands were shaking and not from the pain. I don't want to run anymore. He looked back at Bakugo, who was slowly getting up, his left arm bleeding and small burn marks littered across his body from one for all's electricity. I need to finish this. Kaken. Bakugo looked up and grit his teeth. Izuku steeled himself. I'm not going to run. You're right. I said I wouldn't give up, so I'm gonna stay and finish this. Bakugo growled, you damn nerd. I'm going to flatten you. They began running at each other, but then Izuku's communicator rang out. Deku. Are you okay? Oh no. I've been completely ignoring Uraraka. And I practically forgot this is just a test. But that gives me an idea. Izuku reached into one of his pouches with his left hand and slid on the ground, managing to evade Bakugo's right hook. Throw it there. He threw the object over his shoulder, watched it ricochet off of the ceiling and then bounce off of the floor until it was within reach. Izuku quickly grabbed it with his right hand and crossed his arms. Captured. Bakugo stopped the explosion he was about to unleash. W. He looked down and nearly screamed upon seeing a white strip of tape extend from Deku's left hand, reach around his back, and then emerge into Deku's right hand. Izuku had thrown the roll of tape while holding one end of it. Then, he grabbed the roll after using the Sharingan to throw it around Bakugo and pulled it with his free hand. Bakugo didn't move for a while, but growled, Deku. The viewing center was silent as could be, the only sound being All Might chanting. Yes, as quietly as he could, which was, surprisingly, very quiet. Finally, the yellow-haired guy spoke, Holy shit. Midoriya's a ninja. The frog girl riveted. In agreement, his accuracy with the capture tape is impressive. Even Yaoyorozu, the cold analytic she was, seemed shocked silent at that maneuver. All Might eventually gathered his bearings and announced, Katsuki Bakugo has been captured. Please exit the building. He smiled proudly. Young Midoriya, it seems you finally managed to stand and shout I am here, to your rival. Young Bakugo certainly can't ignore this. Uraraka cheered at the announcement from All Might, yes. He did it. Ida, while disappointed in his teammate, inwardly smiled that his new friend managed to defeat his tormentor. However, he had a bigger problem right now. Smart move, Uraraka. Using capture tape to trap me within a perimeter. True to his word, the gravity heroine had wrapped capture tape all around the columns, essentially forcing Ida to remain within the rectangular area to avoid being disqualified. Uraraka smiled. I really ought to thank Deku for letting me see his notes. I could leap over the tape, but not with the bomb weighing me down. Maybe in second gear, but there's not enough space to enter it. I just need to focus on moving it away from her for as long as possible in whatever area I have. Ida repeatedly dodged her movements, but even he was getting tired. Uraraka, on the other hand, had been trying to move much faster than she was physically able to for an extended period of time and looked ready to drop. Uraraka? Deku's whispered voice appeared from her communicator. She immediately perked up. Deku? You alright? I'm fine. I'm actually by the stairs right now. From what I can see, if you can get on the other side of the room, I can try to distract Ida and give you the chance to grab the bomb. Uraraka smiled, excited at the prospect, and immediately got into position, directly adjacent from the entrance, with Ida and the nuke in between. Then her partner quietly snuck out from the stairway and Uraraka completely forgot the plan. Deku? He looked terrible. His right hand was bleeding badly, and his suit was basically destroyed. And his body was covered in ugly red burns. Midoriya? Ida perked up and pivoted, nearly spitting up. Midoriya, are you alright? Shaking herself off of the shock of seeing her battered friend, she prepared herself. That's the signal. Uraraka jumped, her spring heels giving her the extra bounce she needed. Unfortunately, she waited too long to jump, and Ida managed to regain his bearings enough to push the bomb away. Uraraka cursed herself silently as she landed and made a mad dash for the bomb. Deku watched the plan fall apart and without thinking, cocked his left arm back. Uraraka, jump forward. Without even thinking, she complied and used her boots to propel herself forward. Ida saw this and tried to run, only to be knocked backwards by an incredible gust of wind. Midoriya had launched a full-force punch into the space between Ida and Uraraka, creating a wave of air pressure. The wall across Izuku shattered under the force of the punch, as did the wall of the building next door. Ida marveled at the power on display. Incredible. Then Uraraka cried, retrieved. All Might smiled as he announced the hero team's victory, and with only 8 seconds left on the clock, too, but seeing his pupil's battered form filled him with guilt. Perhaps I could have stopped the battle earlier, but Izuku may have been exhausted and bloody, but he was smiling. Even as he lay on a stretcher to be carried by the UA medical bots to Recovery Girl, he was smiling. Sure, tears of pain were filling his eyes, but All Might was sure there were some happy tears too. Bakugo, on the other hand, was stone silent as he left for the nurse's office, his arm hanging bare despite Yaoyorozu's offering of bandages. All Might cleared his throat as the class settled down from the excitement of the first match. Now, can anyone tell me the MVP of this match? The pink girl raised her hand. Oh, pick me, sensei. The blue and red blonde chuckled at her enthusiasm. Yes, young Ishido? Midori. He beat Bakugo and then used that awesome punch to stop Ida. All Might smiled that his pupil was getting some recognition but shook his head. Unfortunately not. Any other takers? Yaoyorozu raised her hand. Both Uraraka and Ida. All Might sensei. Care to explain? She elaborated. Bakugo let a personal vendetta get in the way. He didn't even try to stop Uraraka from escaping. Midoriya also fell victim to this, but also injured himself twice and caused severe damage to the building and its adjacent one. In a real situation, that would have been catastrophic. Ida and Uraraka both made mistakes but remained true to their goals. Uraraka gave her position up but restricted Ida's movements with the tape. Ida got distracted near the end, but still kept the bomb away. Ahem. All Might was taken aback by the analytical skills on the number 1 student. WL said. I would only add that Ida fully embodied his role more so than any of the others. Yaoyorozu bowed slightly. Apologies for not picking up on that. As fellow students, it's important we recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses so that we may support each other better. All Might's sweat dropped. So sincere. Anyways, now let's get on to the next battle. Bakugo silently returned at some point, sporting a fresh bandage around his arm. He glowered, thinking about how his match had went. Of course, that all went out the window once he saw Team B. A few hours later. Yeesh, keep getting injured like this and forget about being the next symbol of peace, you won't even make it past the sports festival? Recovery Girl chastised her young patient. Izuku bowed apologetically. Sorry, Recovery Girl. I really tried not to today. She sighed and sat back in her chair. I suppose you're still new at this, but try to learn to control one for all as soon as possible. You'll be a better hero for it anyways. She smiled slightly, though, based on Mr. Bakugo's injuries, I'd say you gave close to what you got. Izuku blushed slightly. Was Kaken okay? Recovery Girl smiled at the compassionate inquiry. Yes, he was fine. Actually, I sent him back a little after you arrived. Too bad you were passed out. He almost looked surprised to see you. She laughed lightheartedly, but Izuku was left perplexed. Kaken looked worried? The youthful heroine shrugged. I don't know the boy well enough to interpret his facial expressions, but it looked not angry, if that helps. Why? Izuku's eyes lit up. May I be excused? Recovery Girl cocked her head at the sudden request, but nodded. You slept through most of your afternoon class and it's probably over by now, so sure. Just be sure to take it easy tonight and come by early tomorrow so I can finish healing you. Izuku quickly changed into his uniform, leaving his jacket off due to the sling on his right arm. He then packed his unfortunately ruined costume into the suitcase for the support company and headed back to class. Unfortunately for him, Izuku had apparently impressed his classmates. So the minute he opened the door, he came face to face with any lifelong introvert's worst nightmare: loud people. Hey, Midoriya's back. The muscular guy with oversized lips walked up and clapped a startled Izuku on the shoulder, the left one luckily. I'm Sato. Those. One seriously sweet fight, bro. The spiky redhead was next. Dude, that was the manliest thing I've seen since we've gotten here. I'm Kirishima. Good to meet you. Izuku's sweat dropped. We've only been here for 2 days. The pink girl popped in. Midori, you were so cool. That one flip you used on Bakugo was seriously awesome. We should definitely break dance sometime. Is that a common pastime? She tapped her chin and perked up. Oh, I'm Mina, by the way. Mina Ishido. Izuku laughed nervously. It's nice to meet you three. Did they stay after to see me? Kirishima noticed the suitcase in his hands. Oh, let me get that. He grabbed it without even waiting for a response and placed it back on the still extended shelf. Oh, thanks, Kirishima. The redhead waved his hands. It's nothing. Glad to help. At that moment, the yellow-haired guy walked in with Uraraka, both laden with textbooks. You know, we should go out sometime. What's your favorite food? Uraraka looked up in thought. I like mochi, Deku. Midway through her sentence, she noticed her bandaged friend and ran over after adding her books to the other guy's pile, causing the poor teen to fall over. Are you okay to move around? Recovery Girl didn't heal you? Izuku blushed. She's always so close. And no, she did. I just didn't have enough stamina for her to finish. He then noticed the suspicious absence of the person he most wanted to talk to. Hey, where's Kaken? The yellow-haired one spoke from under the books. Bakugo? He left a couple minutes ago. I'm Denki Kaminari, by the way. Nice to dash. Dude, he's gone. Sato interrupted. Kaminari just groaned. Of course he is. Bakugo was nearly at the gate when he heard a gratingly loud voice. Kaken? He turned in a huff in time to see Izuku run down the front steps, his right arm kept in a tight sling close to his chest. What do you want, Deku? If you came to gloat, you really should wait until your arm's healed. Izuku shook his head. I wanted to tell you that today, it's my loss. This made the explosive teen pause. The fuck are you on about? The greenette looked down. If it wasn't an exam, there's no way I could have won. Even if I used my quirk's full power, you probably would have avoided it and then I'd be too injured to fight. That's why. Izuku looked Bakugo straight in the eyes. I don't want this kind of a win. I want to beat you fair and square. Bakugo was silent, but growled after a moment. Damn it. Damn it. You're still looking down on me? Always trying to help. I can do thing myself, damn it. I don't need your pity. I'll beat you and that half-and-half bastard all on my own. Izuku shook his head. That's not it. Then why are you always doing this kind of shit? No matter how much I tell you to fuck off, you won't listen. You think you're that much better than me? Me? Izuku yelled out. It's because I'm jealous of you. This finally shut Bakugo up. The former continued. All my life, I saw how amazing you were. And I just wanted to be like you. Even when you were an ass. I still wanted to have your motivation and power. And then I got this quirk and I thought I could finally be like you. But I still don't know how to use it. Izuku looked at Bakugo, trying to convey everything he felt, but that's why I'm going to make this borrowed power my own and defeat you with it. I'm going to show you that I can surpass you. He felt a slight itch in his eyes, but ignored it, stealing his gaze. Bakugo stared silently at Izuku and he could practically feel the sincerity behind that statement. He remembered all the beatings he and his henchmen gave the kid, all the insults he threw, the threats. Yet, Deku didn't give up. And now, he was telling him that it was all to prove that they could be equal. The ashy blonde turned around and loosened his facial expression. He started walking but commented, "Today's a draw. You're nowhere a threat to me, so you better get to work. One day, we're gonna settle this." Deku was taken aback, but nodded and cried, "You got it." Bakugo didn't respond, but as he walked to the station, he recalled one of Izuku's phrased, "Borrowed power?" At the same time, Izuku was met by a surprise guest, young Midoriya. He nearly spat, "All Might?" The number one hero laughed merrily. "I couldn't help but overhear you and young Bakugo talk. I must say, it seems you really got through to him. Though, why you turned on your Sharingan, I don't know." Izuku raised an eyebrow before realizing his quirk was, indeed, active. "What? I don't remember turning it on." He deactivated it. All Might shrugged before continuing, "However, I was shocked to hear you reveal one for all to him." I didn't dash. He remembered what he said. "I'm so sorry, All Might Sensei. Please accept my apologies." "I'm sorry." He bowed repeatedly and deeply, outshining even Ida. All Might stopped him with a light chop. "Luckily, he seems not to have noticed, but you must be more careful in the future. One for all is a carefully guarded secret for good reason." Izuku looked down. "Sorry, All Might. I just wanted to be sincere with him." All Might nodded understandingly. "It's fine. I understand your intentions. And cheer up. I think you really got through to him." All Might smiled at his student, earning one in return. "Oh, by the way, how are your injuries?" Izuku gestured to his arm. "They're fine. My broken bone got set, but there's still a few small fractures that Recovery Girl couldn't heal. And my hand is still a bit sensitive." All Might nodded. "Yes, I noticed you didn't regulate your power output like you did with Aizawa. Why not?" Izuku sighed. "It takes so long, even with the Sharingan to help me. Against someone as fast as Kaken, I couldn't even breathe, much less focus on that." The older man nodded understandingly before snapping his fingers. "Don't ask questions, but I want you to focus one for all in your left arm. Shoot for 3%. I think your body should be able to handle that comfortably." Izuku raised an eyebrow, but complied, using his Sharingan to gauge his power output. "Okay. I have it around 3%. Now what?" All Might grinned. "Now, you need to learn how it feels." "Huh?" He elaborated. "You said that using your Sharingan to help regulate your output takes too long. So instead, use it to train yourself to get used to the feel of 3%. Then, you'll be able to call upon it without even thinking about it." Izuku grinned. "Oh yeah." He focused on the energy circulating in his arm, the power he felt. Then he deactivated both quirks before recharging one for all back to what he thought was 3%. Activating his Sharingan to check and, "It's not even close." Izuku groaned at the massive overshot. All Might chuckled. "If it were easy, then anyone could do it. Just keep practicing. First learn to feel the output and then focus on speeding it up. Anyways, it's late and you don't want to keep your mother waiting. Best be off." Izuku nodded and left for the station. After recuperating some stamina with a nap on the train, he arrived at his home, much to his mother's worry once she saw his arm. Overall, his evening was rather peaceful, especially compared to the day he had. However, only a block away, two men were panicking in the streets. Or at least one of them was. "Damn it, Hojo. Where is she? If we can't find her, we're gonna get our asses handed to us." A young man with long light hair and a beak-shaped black mask over his mouth spoke. His partner, a bald man with shadowed eyes and a face obscured by a light mask, responded, "Come, Toya. The boss will understand. And it's not like she'll have anywhere to go. This is a war of attrition." Toya shook his head wildly. "Nah man, We're gonna get reset for sure. I don't want to get reset. I like my body. Hojo sighed. Truth be told, I do have some back pain. Maybe a reset wouldn't be the worst thing. While they bickered back and forth, they missed a shivering child hiding under a dumpster by a certain apartment complex, her white hair so caked with dirt it appeared black and her horn painfully shoved against the asphalt. Keisha Mainu always got her story. Armed with her trusty microphone and supported by her partner in crime and cameraman, Tsukashi team, she had covered drug rings, slave trades, sex scandals, political corruption, and even vigilantism throughout her illustrious career. So why, pray tell, was she having so much trouble writing a fluff piece about All Might and UA? Excuse me, can you tell me what it's like to have All Might as a teacher? She held her mic out to a shorter boy with a young face and unkempt green hair. Unfortunately, he had the personality to go with his immature appearance. What? I'm on TV. This continued for several minutes, the thought of being on TV apparently enough to reduce this child into a defective unit. The next person they approached was a short girl with a brown bob cut and massive eyes. Ooh, he's like all muscly and big and stuff. The reporter's sweat dropped. That's even more unhelpful that Captain Stutter. Turns out, to her surprise, there was such a thing as too helpful. Every day we learn from him is a reminder that we're attending the finest institution in the world. I could not be more humbled. She dragged her cameraman away from the tall boy with wide hand gestures to interview another boy with spiky ash blonde hair. Before she could even hold out the mic, however, he roared, "Fuck off, you old idiot." From the back of the crowd, two figures smiled at the sight. A lanky man with blue hair turned to his companion, a black and purple gaseous figure. "Cheeky brat, huh?" Aizawa cleared his throat. "I saw your battle trial recordings." Bakugo, the hot-tempered teen, grunted in acknowledgement. "Grow up. You're talented, so don't waste it by being an idiot." Bakugo glowered at his desk, but quietly responded, "Yes, sir." And Midoriya, Izuku yelped at his name, "You were the only student to get seriously injured. It was the second day, so you get a pass, but the next time it happens, you're going to write a 10-page paper on masochism graded by midnight. Got it?" "Yes, Aizawa-sensei." The teacher nodded. "All right, today we have something important to get out of the way," Aizawa said in his monotonous, yet intimidating voice. Almost everyone in the class sharply inhaled. "Another test. You need to pick a class representative." "So normal." "Pick me," Kaminari exclaimed. "I'll be a great rep." "No, elect me," Ashido insisted. Kirishima interjected, "Nah, I'm the best choice. A manly job like class rep needs a manly person. And who better than me?" The short girl with AUX cords for earlobes, Jiro Kyoka, narrowed her eyes. "Are you saying only guys can be class rep?" Kirishima turned to her and gave her the most glaring "are you an idiot" face possible. "Huh? What are you talking about? What does being manly have to do with gender?" Mineta interrupted, "Pick me. I'll make sure all skirts can only be 30 centimeters or lower." "Midoriya, wanna be my deputy?" Izuku buried his face in his hands. "Please don't talk to me. I almost miss middle school." One by one, nearly everyone in the class proclaimed their own desire to run for office. That was until Ida came to the rescue. "We must settle this in a dignified, democratic method. Let us vote for class representative." Yayarozu countered, "But wouldn't everyone just vote for themselves? Besides, we don't know each other well enough." Azui retorted. Ida shook his head. "If most of us vote for ourselves, then whomever receives multiple votes must be the ideal candidate for having made such an impression in such a short amount of time." Aizawa shrugged and went into his sleeping bag/cocoon. "Just hurry it up." So after the votes were cast and counted, and recounted after Ida's insistence, the results were announced on the board. Izuku Midoriya, 3 votes. Momo Yayarozu, 2 votes. Everyone else, 0 to 1 votes. Izuku laughed at the third line. So nonspecific. Then he realized what the vote meant. Aizawa glanced at the board and grunted. "All right, Midoriya is class representative. Yayarozu, your deputy representative. The rest of class is study hall." The teacher curled back up and went to sleep on his desk as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Bakugo narrowed his eyes and turned to face the still shell-shocked Greenette. He looked like he was going to say something, most likely a profanity of some kind, but just turned back around, whatever. Ida grit his teeth. To think it was my idea and I received only 1 vote. But I'm so happy someone thinks highly of me. Denki smiled. Hey, this could work. Midoriya's super quick on his feet and Yaoyorozu's mad smart, too. Because he zoned out the second Aizawa finished talking, Izuku could only choke out an. Uraraka ran to her friend. Congrats, Deku. I know you'll be an awesome representative. Normally, lunchtime at UA is a time of joy. A time to enjoy the company of friends. A time to eat food made by a man with a cooking quirk that inexplicably became a pro-hero. Unfortunately, Midoriya was still twitching, completely shocked at the outcome of the vote. The others at his table, Ida to his right, Kirishima to his left, Uraraka, Ishido and Yaoyorozu on the other side, had. Kirishima clapped him on the shoulder. Man, Midoriya, you need to lighten up. If I knew you'd be this freaked, I probably would have asked before I voted. Midoriya snapped out of his funk. Huh? You voted for me, Kirishima? I thought you said you wanted to be class rep. He nodded. Oh, I do, but Ida really got me thinking that my vote should go to whoever deserved it most, and you were definitely the manliest guy yesterday. Ida nodded in agreement. Indeed, Midoriya. Your quick thinking and iron jaw are traits we need in a leader. That's why I voted for you. Even though you all wanted to be class rep, you guys? Izuku felt his heart clench and his face contort into an expression mixing gratitude, tearfulness, and just a touch of humility. What's wrong with your face? Uraraka plainly asked. Izuku wiped his eyes. Just super grateful is all. I'll be sure to live up to your expectations, he declared, his eyes swimming with, as Kirishima would call them, manly tears. Uraraka then asked, Oh, wait. I voted for you too. So who'd you vote for? I voted for Ida, actually. Izuku chuckled, scratching his cheek. Ida was surprised. What? Wow, Midoriya, I humbly thank you. Would you extras shut it? We're trying to eat. Bakugo roared from across the table. The 6 immediately fell silent with a sweat drop. Who's we? You're sitting alone. Uraraka then perked up from her juice. Humbly? Ida, are you a rich boy? Ida coughed into his hand. Well, I usually do not advertise it, but my family does have many famous heroes in it. Really? Izuku's eyes sparkled with intrigue. Who? Anyone we'd know? Have you heard of Ingenium? Oh yeah. He's an awesome pro with over 60 sidekicks at his own agency. He's a relative? Ida chuckled proudly. He's my brother. Izuku gasped and fell back in an awestruck stupor, saved from falling to the ground by a quick Kirishima, Eche Midoriya. This is too much. Ishido changed the subject. Hey, Yamamo the nickname earned a blush from the raven-haired beauty in question. Who was your second vote? She raised an eyebrow. How do you know who my first vote was? Ishido snickered. Well, it's sorta obvious you voted for yourself. You're like mad confident. Her serious facade broke faster than Midoriya's bones, and she placed a hand over her mouth with a gasp, her eyes glittering. You think I'm confident? The other 5 at the table smiled at the sudden bounciness. So refreshing. The taller girl composed herself and answered, I'm not too sure. I've only really talked to Jiro and I was, unfortunately, with my Netta for the battle trial, but I don't think either of them voted for me. It would have to be the last person with 0 votes. Ida, do you know who that was? Before the bespectacled boy could answer, a blaring alarm went off, filling the very air with a shrill ringing. Security level 3 has been breached. Please evacuate in a calm and orderly fashion. Most of the older students immediately took off in a panic, fleeing the cafeteria in a frenzied dash for the exit. Hey, what's going on? Kirishima asked one upperclassman. Someone's invaded the school. This hasn't happened in years. You ought to get moving too. Soon enough, the students of Class 1A were caught up in the mob, uncomfortably shoved around and pressed against walls, lockers, or even other students. Ida grunted as his face was slammed against the window, but he widened his eyes once he saw a gaping hole in the UA fence and a swarm of reporters scrambling through it. That's it? Everyone calm down. It's just the press, Ida cried, but to avail. He continued to shout, desperately trying to gain his classmates' attention. It's not working. How can I reach them? Ida noticed Uraraka nearby and a metaphorical light bulb lit up. Uraraka, please use your quirk on me. She complied without hesitation, tapping her friend's outstretched hand and watching him float up. I must gain their attention in a manner that is both graceful and inspiring. That is how you represent UA. So after crashing face first into the wall, Ida shouted at the now stunned crowd, "Everyone! The breach was caused by the press only. It is nothing to panic over. We are students of UA and we must act in a manner befitting our institution." Luckily, his words managed to quell the rampaging mob, so the evacuation continued in a calm and orderly fashion. That was, until Uraraka released her quirk and Ida fell right on top of Bakugo. Aizawa droned, "Class rep and deputy rep, you need to fill the rest of the positions." Izuku and Yaoyorozu stood at the front of the class with a list of officers. Izuku spoke as the representative, "So we need a secretary, a treasurer, and a historian. Are any of you interested?" Kaminari spoke up, "What do they do?" "Oh, my bad. The secretary takes attendance and keeps track of important information for the whole class." Kaminari sighed, "So basically all the hard stuff? The treasurer is in charge of class funds and events, like parties and class outings." Before any of the students could even form excited looks, Aizawa added, "It's mostly for general studies and the business and support courses. We don't have that kind of time." Izuku laughed nervously, "And the historian keeps a record of class activities?" Aizawa translated, "They mean take pictures. Why Nizu insists on having this position is beyond me, but..." Immediately, cries came across the classroom declaring intent to run. Scrambling to write all the names down, Izuku announced, "Okay, we'll appoint positions over the weekend. Is that all right, Aizawa-sensei?" The pro-hero shrugged, "As long as I have it by Monday." Izuku nodded, "Oh, also, I think that Ida should replace me as class republic." Ida nearly dropped. "What? Midoriya, I don't understand. You were elected fair and square." "Why yeah, but, in the cafeteria, you were the first one to notice that there wasn't a real threat dash." Aizawa would have laughed at that statement if the massive hole in the fence Nizu showed him wasn't so imposing. "Honestly can't say there wasn't one. And you managed to get everyone's attention. Truth be told, I'm not really good at public speaking or anything and I'm too timid to lead." Most of the class nodded in agreement, almost comical in their unity. "But you're good at that. So you should be the one to lead us." Ida was silent for a moment, but he quickly grabbed Izuku's hand and shook it firmly. "Midoriya, your words move my heart. I will accept this position, but only if you support me as deputy representative. Your intellect and decisiveness are still very much needed." Izuku smiled and shook his hand back. "Deal?" Yaoyorozu could only sweat drop. "I feel overlooked." Aizawa cleared his throat. "Now that you've decided to make me redo a stack of forms, how about we take a short quiz while I catch up?" The entire class groaned. "Midoriya could take it back. Take it back." Ashido frantically cried. Aizawa just chuckled, a sign of true sadism. "There are no take-backs in my class. Now you have an essay to write. 1 page for every piece of paperwork." Ida raised his hand. "Is that 1 page front and back, Aizawa-sensei?" The screams and roars from the class that day made even present Mike plug his ears. Izuku grit his teeth, the Dagobah beach sand around him shifting slightly under the subtle shockwaves emanating from his extended leg. He was in a lunge position, his eyes closed tightly as he carefully felt the glow of one for all in his right leg ebb and flow under his mental grasp. "Remember how it felt. 3%. Izuku repeated to himself like a mantra. Once he was satisfied, he opened his eyes to check. Sharingan, damn it. So close too. He deactivated both quirks and sat down to take a breath. In the last couple of days, he'd been substituting normal exercise for training to use one for all. While he'd certainly improved, he was still overshooting for the most part. Sometimes, even when he'd been sure that he was on the dot, he lost focus and it shot back up. "I'm sure the range is totally fine, but precision is everything." He groaned and shook his head. "It's like learning to move a brand new limb that constantly wants to go up. I need to get it down perfect or I'll never be able to catch up to everyone else." Standing up, Izuku concentrated one for all in his right arm, once more forcing the torrent of energy down into a more manageable wave. The egg in the microwave? It won't break, it won't break. He opened his eyes and checked his work. Did it get brighter? This continued for some time until finally, yes. That's it. Of course, he couldn't reproduce the result perfectly after the first success, but by the time the sun set, Izuku had successfully charged 3% of one for all in each of his limbs at least once. Can't actually test its power in public, so I guess I should just head home for now. Aizawa-sensei said we'd have something special for basic training anyways. I guess they want our first week to end on a high note. The long walk home had long since become a cool-down jog, but tonight, Izuku took it slow, savoring the last few sips of water in his bottle and the cool spring air. He stopped by the sporting goods store to buy a new, all-black face mask while the support company repaired his official one, then continued on his way. He approached the large recycling bin outside his apartment complex and threw the bottle away, only to jump out of his skin when he heard a sound from inside the blue container. Ow! It was so quiet, it might as well not have been uttered. But Izuku was certain that he'd heard someone cry out. Hello? Is someone in there? Izuku inched near the bin, one foot pointed away in case he needed to make a break for it. His heart thudded audibly against his ribs, or at least it felt like it did. There was no response, so Izuku cracked open the lid and peeked. Inside, hello? However, he didn't see anything but bottles, cardboard boxes, and what looked like dirty mop. Didn't know you could recycle those. Closing the lid, Izuku scratched his head. I could have sworn. The next morning, Class 1A had gathered outside the UA building in what looked like a parking lot after changing into their hero costumes, apparently for their special battle training session. Man, I don't like being in suspense about all this. Kaminari groaned, putting his hands on his head. Kirishima smiled. It must be something good though. Otherwise we wouldn't be missing all our normal classes for this. Sato deadpanned. Also, do you want to keep listening to Present Mike-sensei do the monologue from Hamlet, Kaminari? The trio shuddered, remembering the ear-gratingly terrible rendition of the classic text, punctuated by Present Mike randomly switched from normal speech to his iconic screeching. On the other end of the parking lot, Izuku just arrived, having modified his gym uniform with some of the gear from his official costume that wasn't destroyed in the battle trial 2 days prior. Once the bus pulled around, Ida exclaimed, "Everyone, line up in number order and please enter the bus in a single file line." Of course, the bus did not have an ordered seat layout, so everyone pretty much sat wherever they wanted, much to Ida's chagrin. To think it was this kind of bus? So uncool. Ida groaned, his cheeks tinted red. While Izuku was busy laughing at his friend's embarrassment, he heard a sentence that made his blood run cold. Midoriya, your quirk reminds me of All Might. Izuku's eyes opened comically wide. W? Azui, there's no way. And my eyes changed color. Azui shrugged. Ribbit. Call me Tsu. And I'm just saying that your strength is reminiscent of his. Although your quirk seems worse because you injure yourself. Or perhaps you just have a weak body. That made Bakugo laugh. Kirishima came to Izuku's defense. It's still awesome to have a flashy quirk like that. Mine makes me look all spiky and scary. And it doesn't do a lot of cool stuff. Izuku shook his head. In no way, Kirishima. Your quirk is crazy strong. Plus, you have a lot of potential as a combat hero. You're like the tank character in a video game. Kirishima looked at his fist and clenched it with a smile. So I'm like Donkey Kong from Super Smash Bros. That's pretty manly. Izuku chuckled sheepishly. With that hair and a hard outer shell, you're basically Bowser. Kaminari added. Besides, what's good about having a flashy quirk if you're a bad person? Like this guy. He jerked his thumb at Bakugo. The hell do you mean, Pikachu? Kaminari just smirked. See what I mean? It's not even been a week and we all know your personality's worse than a manure farm smell. Tsuyu nodded. He does seem more villainous than heroic. Ribbit, I will fry you up and feed you to that French fuck. Aoyama shook his head rapidly in the back of the bus. Non, merci. Who said you had a choice? Izuku scratched his head nervously. Oh my god, they're making fun of Kaken. I feel disconcertingly satisfied. After they arrived to the massive domed complex, and Aizawa unwrapped a still writhing Bakugo from his scarf's clutches, The students marveled at the assorted landscapes and scenery in the indoor facility. It's like a theme park. But which one? Welcome to USJ. That one. The speaker approached the group by the entryway, gesturing widely past the staircase leading down to the main plaza and the paths to the different zones, also known as the unforeseen simulation joint. My name is 13. Both Izuku and Uraraka fangirled. I know what I said, over the sight of the space suit-clad pro-hero. 13 chuckled and rubbed his head. Pleasure to meet you all. Like these two said, I'm the space hero, 13. I specialize in rescue operations, which is actually why you're all here. Aizawa approached the space hero. 13, where's All Might? 13 cleared his throat and whispered while holding out 3 fingers. Izuku couldn't hear the words, but he got the gist. All Might is out of time. 13 continued his lecture. You see, most pro-heroes rarely fight villains, if at all. The majority of hero work are rescue missions. However, they're also much tougher than just fighting. Like my quirk, Black Hole? Uraraka's eyes twinkled, recognizing the quirk's name as 13 held a finger out to the class. Is extremely useful for absorbing debris and clearing disaster sites. However, it could easily kill someone. I'm sure many of you have similar predicaments. Izuku looked at his fist. That's why I've been training. But today we're going to practice this. You'll all have to go to different disaster zones and attempt to resolve the crisis with your quirks in a manner befitting a hero. That is to say, no collateral damage. Speaking of collateral damage, a chilling voice sounded from the plaza below. Aizawa instantly tensed and stood guard at the top of the stairs. Izuku couldn't help himself and went to look too, nearly fainting at the sight of over 30 villains, all entering through a purple and black portal of some kind. Leading them was a lanky man with light blue hair and hands covering his face and black clothing. 13 stammered in shock at the sudden invasion. Senpai. What's the plan? Aizawa grit his teeth. I'll handle this alone. Protect the students. We're under attack. Izawa's jaw tightened, his gaze stealing under his goggles. How did all these villains sneak past our security system? Is that purple smog from some sort of a teleportation quirk? But even that shouldn't get past our communications array. Kaminari, can you get a signal out? Try and contact UA or the police. Aizawa commanded. On it. Kaminari responded as he used his antennae to broadcast a signal. 13 said All Might was out of time for now. Did they know that? But the guy with the hands was talking about collateral damage. Does that mean we're not his targets? Izuku stammered at the ever-growing swarm of villains. Sharingan. I count 45 right now. And I can see a lot of life signs in the different zones. Aizawa-sensei. The pro grunted. Get back, Midoriya. Not now. Izuku continued anyways. I can see a lot of life signs spread around the disaster sites. There's not supposed to be anybody besides us, right? Aizawa growled. No, there's not. If that purple guy really has a warp quirk and they bothered to stock each zone with villains, 13, there are villains in the disaster zones. I bet the teleportation user's gonna try to separate us so we're easy targets. 13 nodded. But to have these many villains, they certainly can't be more than Class D. Maybe save for those 3. 13 didn't even need to gesture to anything for everyone to know he meant the warp quirk user, the lanky guy covered in hands, and a massive creature with a beak, exposed cranium, and gouges littered across its black skin. Izuku called to Aizawa. Sensei, we should run. There's too many of them. And your quirk. Eraserhead practically smirked. You can't become a pro-hero by only having one gimmick. With that, Aizawa charged the villains that took the initiative to climb the front stairs. Running into battle by himself. What an idiot! One villain shouted as he tried to fire the guns in his fingertips, only to find that they didn't work. What the F dash? Aizawa elbowed him in the nose, causing a rather impressive spray of blood. He then seized another villain by the neck and pulled him into one of his colleagues, sending both tumbling down the steps. With a few strategic twirls of his scarf, he was able to entrap another 3 villains in its grasp, taking them out with a quick tug of the cloth that slammed all of them together. Class 1A watched in amazement as their teacher single-handedly fought a small army of evildoers. Izuku watched especially closely, using his Sharingan to trace Eraserhead's movements. On the villain's end of things, the leader was scratching his neck in irritation. These damn pros. Small fry NPCs can't hope to stand against a mini-boss like this. And the final boss is nowhere in sight. The purple smoke being, now adopting his corporeal form with a finely tailored three-piece suit sans jacket, spoke. That one, Tamura Shigaraki, is Eraserhead. One of the more obscure pro-heroes. The scratching quickened. I remember. He can erase non-heteromorphic quirks. So he's a gimmick boss. No problem, I brought my action replay. On cue, the large black birdman growled as if preparing to pounce. Shigaraki chuckled, the air seemingly growing colder as he did. Not yet, Nomu. Let Kurogyri have some fun, first. Kurogyri, you know what to do. Of course, sir. In a swirl of dark mist, Kurogyri vanished from the plaza before reappearing at the front door, effectively sandwiching the students. Hello, future heroes. Could anyone tell me where All Might is? 13 barked. Everyone, get behind me. Kaminari, any progress? The electric man shook his head. There's some sort of interference. Like another signal that cancels mine out as soon as I release it? There must be someone with a quirk like that hidden in the disaster zones. Ida, we need you to run and get help. Ida shook his head, but 13-sensei, running is dishonorable. It would be best to stay and help fight the dash. Yaoyorozu interrupted him. Ida, as class rep, it's your job to watch our well-being. And right now, the best thing you can do is to get help. The speedster thought for a brief moment before nodding and racing for the doors. However, Kurogyri was quick on the draw. Not so fast, boy. Can't have you running off, can we? He opened a portal in front of Ida that led right back to 13. The rescue hero growled and extended a finger. Ida, go again and don't stop for anything. I'll keep him off of you. Black hole. 13 waited until Ida was at a safe distance before his fingertip fell down, revealing a black abyss that sucked in everything with a violent pull. The mist man was no exception as his gaseous form was quickly pulled in. Izuku watched in awe until he noticed a metallic glint within the purple man's body. Looking with the Sharingan, he realized that it was glowing, much like a human body under his quirk's special eyesight. That must be his real body. We can target it. Kurogyri growled, what a powerful quirk. Shame it's squandered on someone with no battle aptitude. With that, a small portal began forming behind 13. However, it never finished forming because at that moment, Kurogyri was sent flying by a strong punch to his body. Ooh. Izuku landed on the ground, the subtle glow of 3% one for all fading from his fist. There's a metal neckplate on him. That's his real body. He was planning on opening a portal behind 13, probably to make Black Hole backfire. I'm lucky the Sharingan and 3% are faster than that. Deku, nice work. Uraraka cheered. That was actually fairly apartment. Yaoyorozu smiled, and that bought time for Ida to get away. True to her words, Ida was currently forcing the doors to USJ open. Kurogyri's face was mostly colored gas, but if colored gas could emote, then Kurogyri was livid. Knocked back by a child. I commend you on your students, 13-sensei. But I'm going to get serious now. He instantly warped Ida back from the door to 13. 13 chuckled, funny. I was going to say the same thing. The gloved hand went out, but this time, the 4 main fingertips opened up, producing a violent maelstrom. In a flash, Kurogyri was pulled back towards peril. However, the teleporter wasn't done as he opened a portal beneath 13 in a near instant. Gravity taking hold, the space hero fell through. Izuku's blood ran cold. Where'd he go? That portal. Its speed was on a completely different level than before. Kurogyri laughed sadistically. Only one way to find an astronaut. Look to the stars. At that moment, 13 crashed into the concrete, cracking his dome and heavily damaging his suit. His exit portal had opened from far above the ground. The hero wasn't conscious, and his body was barely shifting from his own breathing. Sorry if that surprised you, but if it helps, he wasn't even awake to feel pain. My quick teleportation tends to be a bit jarring. Uraraka looked at the mist man and felt a fire ignite in her heart at the sight of her favorite hero downed. Monster. Ida grit his teeth. If he wasn't so preoccupied with buying me time, this would have never happened. Curse my weakness. Apparently, Bakugo and Kirishima felt some similar rage because they charged the villain, explosions and rock-hard fists at the ready. However, the purple man simply opened 2 foggy portals in front of the students, making them vanish from sight. Don't worry about your friends. You really ought to worry about yourself first. Then several portals opened around the students, pulling nearly all of them inside. Izuku felt a weird floating sensation as he became enshrouded in the dark fog. However, he felt a pair of hands pull him forward. Man, that was a close one. Glad we didn't lose you, huh? Kaminari said, wiping his brow at having saved his friend. Izuku was about to thank him when he realized something. Kaminari, I think everyone else lost us. Jiro panted heavily as she surfaced, water slowly trickling down her head. What the heck? There was no time to gather her bearings for at that moment, a shark-like villain breached from the water, his jagged teeth poised to strike. I didn't come here to kill kids, but who am I to choose? Jiro's eyes widened, and her body seized up in shock. I can't move. Luckily, she didn't have to. Azui leapt out of the water and delivered a hell of a kick to the shark villain's gills, causing him to convulse and fall unconscious. Jiro grab on. Azui extended her tongue and pulled the punk girl with her, carrying them both to the deck of a large yacht in the middle of the water. Jiro coughed out whatever water entered her lungs and sighed in relief. Phew. Thanks, Azui. Call me Tsu. Oh, Jiro blushed at the lack of formality. Oh, thank God. I'm going to die surrounded by women. And like that, Jiro's face became red for a completely different reason. Oh great, we're stuck with the pervert. Mineta started sobbing. I'm so happy you're at Sundara. Tsu slapped him with her tongue. Let's focus on escaping. Ribbit. The fog man was looking for All Might. I suppose that means they came to kill or capture him. Ribbit. They came to kill All Might? Are they stupid? Jiro asked, feeling an incredible sense of unease at Tsuyu's deduction. Mineta was bawling now. Tsu, please tell me you're kidding. Only my friends can call me Tsu. And I generally just say what's on my mind. Then we're gonna die. The short kid was practically hysterical, much to the villain's amusement. One of them, a ghastly-looking skeleton with black armor, smirked. Looks like Yue isn't as tough as they want you to believe. He raised his hand up, which produced a claw made of water from the surface. I guess that just makes them easy pickings. On the yacht, Tsuyu and Jiro were still trying to create a plan. Ribbit, we're in the flood zone, so I suppose everyone else is scattered across the other areas. If we can, we should try to find the others and regroup. Jiro scratched her head. But how can we escape? You're the only one fast enough to outrun them in water, but you'd be way slower with me. And me. Mineta cried, tears forming. Jiro didn't even acknowledge him. How can we at least hold the villains back long enough to escape? I have an idea, but I need your boot. So you just smacked him again, Ribbit? They circled around the boat. I might be able to jump past the villains with just one of you. Then I could come back and get the other. It'd be risky, but it's our best chance. Jiro, give me your boot. Shut it, mini perv. We don't have time for your shit right now. But I have an idea. I don't want to hear your half-baked attempt to see us naked, you ignorant F-dash. At that moment, a massive claw of water ripped through the boat, causing it to sink. What's the plan? Jiro handed Mineta one of her boots. He immediately removed the speaker from the boot. Then he detached the grill, revealing the subwoofer beneath. Normally, sound waves fade out quickly in air because air's compressible, but water isn't. So the sound waves from Jiro's boots would spread throughout the water, disabling the villains. Ribbit, that's pretty smart, Mineta. Tsuyu tilted her head, genuinely surprised. Mineta puffed his chest proudly. I can't die until I touch Yaoyorozu's boobs. So until then, I just have to keep on living. Jiro resisted the temptation to throw the micro-perv into the water, replacing her now plain boot while plugging into her speaker. So I just need to create a massive sound wave underneath the water? Not too hard. If it's too strong, you'll liquefy their internal organs. Tsuyu added, Too weak and it'll be like a jacuzzi. Jiro gulped and nodded, plugging into her speaker. Alright, let's do this. Todoroki sighed, his breath visible as a cold mist. Even as far as weaker villains go, you're all on the low end of things. The villains in front of him could only groan and stutter in response, completely incapacitated on account of the ice encapsulating their bodies. What the hell? One of the villains stammered, the cold seeping into his bones. The second we showed you up, his kid? Shigaraki promised the students would be easy. This guy's be better than most pros. Todoroki turned to leave, only to hear another villain pop up from behind him. Never let your guard down, kid. Not even FO dash. The villain never finished his words because in a flash, Todoroki pushed him down with a palm strike that left ice spreading across his body, cementing him to the ground. Learn your own advice. You have a few minutes before hypothermia kicks in. I'm sure I could get a pass for it, but I'd rather not kill you. So, tell me why you're here. Todoroki coldly stated, his left side steaming slightly in a tantalizing reprieve for the villains. The one he last froze broke immediately. We're here to kill All Might. Todoroki nearly laughed. I wanted a serious answer, not dash. He is serious. Shigaraki has some sort of weapon that can kill him. Honest. The desperation in the villains' voices certainly indicated sincerity, but no amount of candor could possibly reconcile the discomfort in Todoroki's mind. All Might? In the ruin zone, Bakugo was having the time of his life blasting villains with hardly a care. Furthermore, the only other student he encountered was probably the only one that he didn't need to worry about hurting in the crossfire. Stupid hair, aim for the throat, will ya? I'm tired of picking up your slack. Kirishima shook his head as he tanked a punch from a villain before headbutting him in the nose. Don't kill them, Bakugo. That's not manly. Who said anything about killing? Bakugo growled back as he wrapped both hands around a rock villain and fired explosions simultaneously. Now die. It didn't take long for all the villains to fall unconscious between the onslaught of the two most combative students. We ought to find the others and regroup, right? Bakugo looked at the downed evildoers and grit his teeth. That fog bastard said they were looking for All Might, probably to kill him. Kirishima scoffed, like that's an actual problem. Shut it, hair for brains. They wouldn't be here if they weren't serious. The redhead reflected for a moment. I guess you have a point, but what can we do about that? Not like we can actually fight anything that can go toe-to-toe with All Might. The explosive teen grit his teeth in a twisted grin. Oh, we absolutely can. I'm going to be number one and you're going to be my meat shield. Kirishima scratched his head. I'm terrified and pumped at the same time, but let's do it. They burst out of the building and made their way out of the ruins zone to the central plaza, luckily, or unluckily, if you're Bakugo, not encountering any resistance. That was, until they actually arrived at their destination. Holy fuck, 10 minutes prior. Aizawa growled as the last of the villains fell down, completely wasted by the pro. Unfortunately, he wasn't in much better condition. My eyes are practically screaming. To his words, his eyes were bloodshot and red, but not because of his quirk. I need to rehydrate, but I still haven't finished off that prick with the hands or bird brain. Shigaraki chuckled as he approached Eraserhead, not even adjusting his steps to avoid stepping on his fallen comrades. Man, Eraser, I know we're on opposite sides, but you're just so cool. The latter grit his teeth and prepared his scarf defensively. This guy hasn't done a thing, but he looks completely confident. He knows my quirk and he just saw me beat his goons, so why is he approaching me like I'm the one in trouble? Aizawa didn't wait to find out. He charged the villain's leader and aimed an elbow at his face. While the attack landed, the villain moved at lightning speed, seizing the appendage firmly despite the blow. You're slowing down, Eraserhead. And your quirk's getting weaker? Aizawa roared as he felt his elbow's skin decay away, revealing the musculature beneath. Pulling back, Aizawa applied pressure to the wound, but eyed his opponent carefully. He's fast, maybe even faster than me at full strength. I'll have to use my quirk and disable him as fast as possible. Shigaraki sked, you're about to erase my quirk, aren't you? Nomu, can you help me out? Izuku was not a fighter. That much was made evident after he threw one punch and nearly broke his hand by hitting with the wrong knuckles. Okay, not a strong start. Just end this quickly and find the others. Yaoyorozu and Kaminari appeared to be trapped in the mountain zone, surrounded by a sizable group of villains. Midoriya, are you holding up all right? His fellow deputy rep called as she effortlessly dispatched villains with a bow's staff. 3% Detroit smash. Izuku mentally exclaimed as he struck a villain, this time with only the first 2 knuckles, out cold with a right cross. I'm fine. Kaminari? The electric type cried as he ran from a small group of assailants. I am not fine. I am very not fine. Yaoyorozu groaned and moved to help him. Izuku practically marveled at the ease with which she fought back her opponents, the tomo of his quirk spinning rapidly as they followed her movements. Even with the Sharingan, I'm having trouble dealing with these many villains. No wonder she got in through recommendations. You should really pay attention, kid. Izuku snapped out of his thoughts in time to feel a punch from a masked villain send him reeling. Midoriya, you okay? Kaminari said as he pulled his friend up. Izuku wiped some of the blood from his mouth. Why, I'm fine. Just a little dazed. Yaoyorozu stood next to them. This isn't good. We're backed against a wall, literally and figuratively. Kaminari, can you not remotely discharge your electricity? He shook his head. Sorry, but I can't control the flow once it leaves my body. If I discharge, I'd probably shock you guys too. I don't think I'll be of much help. An idea popped into Izuku's head. I have an idea. Yaoyorozu, can you make a scarf like Aizawa-sensei's, but conductive? A smirk of realization spread across her face. I see. That won't take me too long. Can you keep them off us, Midoriya? Izuku nodded, feeling adrenaline spread throughout his body. Got it? He grabbed Yaoyorozu's bow and started pushing villains back, copying the moves he observed to the best of his ability. My wrists aren't as flexible as hers, but thanks to One for All, Izuku charged his leading arm and brought the staff down on a villain's helmet, shattering it and knocking the person beneath instantly. Then Izuku's eye twitched. Damn it! I'm almost out of time with the Sharingan. Yaoyorozu came to the rescue. Midoriya, it's done. She held a bundle of coppery cloth in her hands. She traded the scarf for her staff, a small smile on her face. Make sure you wrap it around skin. Izuku nodded, charging his power. I can't move as fast as Aizawa-sensei, but the principles are the same. Grip the scarf loosely with my left hand, wrap it with my right, get it back to Kaminari. Focus One for All in my legs and… Izuku took off, tracing his own movements to Aizawa's with the increased speed afforded by 3%. Dodging and weaving under the villain's blows with his Sharingan, he quickly wrapped it around his opponent's exposed arms, ankles or necks. Anywhere he could find, really. Gore, buzz off kid. The last villain charged Izuku, his fist encased in stone. He's going for a haymaker. If I sweep the legs. With his supercharged leg muscles, Izuku easily knocked the footing out from under the villain, giving him the chance to wrap the scarf around his neck as he face-planted. Then Izuku threw the last piece of the fabric to Kaminari and shouted, That fabric's a conductor. Put it all through your arm. Realization dawned on the latter's face and he grinned. Now this is what I expect from my student council. Take this. Kaminari channeled electricity through his arm, which traveled through the copper in the scarf through all the villains, essentially tossing the remaining 7 in one go. Izuku collapsed to the ground, laughing despite his exhaustion. His legs ached from accidentally going over his limit, his eyes stung from pushing the now deactivated Sharingan, and his jaw still rang from the blow he took. But damn it, he just fought villains. And he won. Man, Midoriya. Good call with the scarf move. That was pretty dope. Kaminari complimented. Yaoyorozu nodded, helping the greenette up. That was a pretty good strategy to think up on the fly. Though how did you think about that? Izuku laughed sheepishly. I sorta stole from Aizawa-sensei. Speaking of which, shouldn't we head back? Yaoyorozu nodded and pointed to the plaza where some fighting was certainly visible. The only way down is to rappel. It'll take me a minute or so to create the gear. Kaminari sweat dropped. Man, 13 Sensei couldn't made an elevator or something when he designed this place? Izuku chuckled, but a roar from something, it didn't sound human, snapped him to attention. That came from the plaza. Ugh, I can't see it from here and the Sharingan's timed out so I can't zoom in. I can make some binoculars. It'll only be a minute. Izuku grit his teeth. No time. I can probably scale this cliff with my quirk. Kaminari grinned. Then let's go. He jumped onto Midoriya's back. Lead on. I meant I'd go alone and you'd follow. Yaoyorozu rubbed her chin. I see. In that case she flung her arms around Midoriya's neck. Onwards, Midoriya. Izuku's face was bright red. How do neither of them think this is weird? It took an insurmountable amount of willpower to not look down as he leapt down the mountain zone, mostly because the girl he was currently carrying bridal style was dressed as conservatively as debut midnight. Once safely on the ground, Midoriya hugged himself. I can never become Yagrum that I. Midoriya, we should be heading out. Yaoyorozu tapped his shoulder, earning a shriek. He whispered, just don't touch or look at me for a while. I'll be fine. Then a snap like a gunshot reverberated throughout USJ, followed by a roar of pain. Hurrying to the plaza where the sound originated, the trio's stomachs collectively dropped. Aizawa was a mess. His arms were bent in right angles in the wrong way, his body looked battered and broken, and his face was practically streaming blood. The large birdman was clutching his head, squeezing it as if it were a balloon ready to pop. Shigaraki laughed at the sight of the pro-hero. Man, Eraserhead, I can't believe you're still conscious. You're really something else. The villain looked around the plaza littered with the unconscious forms of his cronies and, way in the back, a huge Lucky Cheeros. Kaminari blanched. Holy shit. Aizawa-sensei's in it bad right now. How should we proceed? Yaoyorozu grit her teeth, a bead of sweat betraying the terror she felt at her teacher's peril. Midoriya, any more bright ideas? He shook his head. All I can think of is to sneak around behind them and attack them while they're They're looking at us. They are? Yaoyorozu looked at the villains and sharply inhaled. They are? Kaminari was practically shaking. We gotta go. Now. They backed away slowly, trying not to attract any more attention, but it was too late. Great. I can grind some levels before the final boss. Shigaraki exclaimed maliciously as he made a mad dash for the students. Kaminari panicked and exclaimed, indiscriminate shock. 1.3 million volts. He cupped his hands together and fired a blinding stream of lightning at the ground, cracking the plaza's tile as electricity coursed towards Shigaraki. Luckily, Izuku and Yaoyorozu were able to jump out of range. However, the villain leader managed to avoid the surge entirely by leaping with surprising force, soaring over the teens and landing behind them. Man, that's a powerful quirk. Guess you're gonna give a lot of EXP, huh? Izuku and Momo grouped together, the latter forming a new staff while the former readied one for all. The latter spoke first. The pros are probably already en route. You can't possibly escape. Surrender now. Izuku gulped. Wish I had that confidence. This guy looks like a psychopath. So Kurogiri failed? That makes me mad. Shigaraki scratched his neck, but stopped to laugh once he realized something. Big words, but you're shaking like a rumble pack. Why don't I help you stop? He charged Yaoyorozu, his pale hand stretched towards her face. But before he knew it, Izuku had dashed towards his co-deputy rep and extended his own fist out, sheer panic fueling him. Detroit smash. A shockwave reverberated throughout the stadium as Izuku struck his target. For a moment he thought he'd saved the day. That euphoria was quickly lost, however, to horror once he realized that his target did not have black skin or a muscular figure. And he wasn't 10 feet tall. This kid pisses me off. Nomu, take care of him. Before Izuku knew it, he felt an incredible pain in his right arm, the same that he'd punched Nomu with, as the latter gripped it with its massive fingers. Then, it threw the green hero to be a good 50 feet, making for a painful landing and a very broken forearm. Midoriya! Yaoyorozu cried. Kaminari, we need to dash. Wait, Kaminari's face was the definition of derp as he repeatedly flashed a thumbs up to everyone in sight. Shigaraki laughed at the sight, not very bright. Nomu, finish the kid first. I hate heroes. He growled the last part, his seething rage filling the air with killing intent. Nomu screeched in response and took off, vanishing in a burst of wind. Izuku channeled one for all and managed to leap partly out of the way, but was still knocked back by the force of Nomu punching the ground where he used to be, pulverizing the tiles. This is crazy. He's nearly as fast as All Might. I need to buy Yaoyorozu and Kaminari time to escape. No time to hold back. Using his left arm to lift up his broken forearm, Izuku flicked his right hand, Delaware smash. A cannon of air shot forth and knocked Nomu back several feet and leaving a slight indentation on its skin, which quickly filled out again. Izuku clutched his broken thumb and middle finger, sliding his elbow pad down to his hand to act as a protective glove of sorts. This thing tanked 100%? All Might's power. And it can heal quickly? Shigaraki cocked his head. Looks like we unlocked a secret boss. Those heroics, pushing my Noma back. That move's name. It's like you're designed to piss me off. Wait. Kaminari bumped into Shigaraki, drooling slightly. The villain boss turned to the fried blonde. You're annoying. He casually reached a hand out towards the latter's throat but forgot an important detail in the wake of Izuku and this new distraction. Hiya! Yaoyorozu exclaimed as she cracked her staff across Shigaraki's face with enough force to break it. The leader crumpled to the ground, the hand covering his face falling off while his long blue hair took over obscuring it. She immediately grabbed Kaminari and made a break for the stairs leading to the exit. Midoriya, the leader's down. Overhearing this, the Nomu turned towards Shigaraki's unconscious body and screeched, forgetting all about Izuku and moving towards the former. It's going to help him? This is my chance. Izuku used his good arm to carefully pull Aizawa onto his shoulders, minding the broken arms, and ran as fast as 3% allowed. Sorry for the bumpy ride, sensei, but I can't leave you back there. By the entrance, Kurogiri was getting frustrated by the repeated attacks of the remaining students. Dodging acid, tape, and the anti-gravity fingertips was growing tiresome and the multi-limbed boy refused to give him an opening to escape. Now that they know my weak point, I have to focus on using portals to redirect and avoid their attacks. And I still haven't recovered from 13th's attack or using my special move. However, Kurogiri likewise prevented the students from either escaping or joining the fight, resolutely guarding the door so that Ida couldn't find an opening for longer than a second. And likewise, the students themselves were getting frustrated at their attempts to flee being thwarted by a cleverly placed portal. Shoji, have you found anyone? Uraraka exclaimed as she narrowly missed the metal neckplate for the umpteenth time. The masked teen shook his head. Haven't been able to focus. He tried to envelop the mist man but failed to properly secure the main body as the latter slipped through his webbed limbs. Everyone. Shoji perked up. I found someone. Mina sweat dropped while cutting off Kurogiri's path towards his leader with a spray of concentrated acid. We all heard that, genius. Yaoyorozu appeared from the stairs, barely winded from the long climb, much to Uraraka's jealous chagrin, with a laughing Kaminari in tow. Kurogiri growled. Those villains were even poorer than we thought. Unconsciously, he drifted towards the new threat, ready to engage. This is my chance. Ida ignored his relief at the sight of more classmates to make a mad dash for the door, which Kurogiri had just left wide open. What? Kurogiri cried as Ida raced past him and tried to shimmy his way through the door he left cracked open from his last attempt. Kurogiri reached out with a portal, fully intending to use it to bisect this particularly annoying student, but felt his real body become weightless. Go now. Uraraka cried as she pushed the villain up high. Ida finally made his way through and took off at max speed towards the main campus. I need to report this. That's game over. While the students diverted their attention, Kurogiri warped using his special, extra-fast portal. Reappearing by Nomu and his master, the teleporter took a moment to recuperate. 2 quick portals and non-stop combat. I don't have much left in me. Then he noticed the unconscious form of his boss. Apparently, neither does he. Shigaraki. Tamura Shigaraki. Nomu, could you wake him up? While the hulking beast didn't even acknowledge the presence of his master's right-hand man, the fallen young adult started to stir. Ugh, critical hit. Shigaraki rubbed his face, only to recoil in shock after a second. Father? Looking at the ground in a panic, Shigaraki began to see that the sight of the hand that used to obscure his face lying on the ground. Father? He replaced the mask, but his breathing was expressive enough to indicate his fury. Kurogiri paled, or at least his equivalent of paling, Shigaraki, do not do anything rash now. The pros will be here soon. Shigaraki started scratching his neck wildly. Everything's going to shit, Kurogiri. I had a plan and nothing's worked. He looked at those students, the pesky brats that ruined his nearly perfect plan. He glared at the tall girl who knocked father off and then to the hero making his way to the stairs, clearly nursing his right arm while carrying Eraserhead on his left shoulder. Tamura Shigaraki, we should escape while we still can, Kurogiri reasoned, but his words fell on deaf ears. Nomu, stop that hero brat. I want to play with him some more. Hey, could I get a hand? Izuku cried to his classmates atop the stairs. I don't really want to drag him up all these stairs. He's in it pretty bad enough. Sato looked down and grimaced at the sight of their broken teacher. I'm on it. Siro, help me secure his arms and stop the bleeding. The duo ran down the stairs and managed to secure Aizawa onto Siro's massive frame. All major injuries resolved thanks to Siro's quirk. You want me to tape up your arm, Midoriya? Looks pretty bad. Izuku shook his head. It's okay. The pain's not too bad anymore. Though that'll probably stop with the adrenaline. Sato chuckled. Tell me about it. I feel like once this stops I won't be able to. The Sugarman's eyes widened, and he began to choke on his words. Siro similarly seized up. Izuku raised an eyebrow, but realization dawned when he felt someone grip the back of his gym uniform. Deku! Uraraka cried as Izuku was thrown back to the plaza by Nomu, landing painfully. Nomu then pulverized the staircase with a single punch, which Sato and Siro narrowly avoided by respectively jumping and pulling themselves back up to the entrance. Nomu then looked at the rest of the students and roared, flexing its massive arms threateningly. In response, Yaoyorozu stood in front of her classmates defensively, brandishing her third staff. If we all attack it in a coordinated effort, we'll be able to defeat it. This isn't good. Without Aizawa-sensei or 13-sensei, we're on our own until Ida gets back. And Bakugo, Todoroki, and Kirishima are probably the most combat-ready of us, but they're still not back yet. Izuku groaned as he sat up, nursing the shoulder he rolled onto. Nomu must have heard this because it immediately jumped back to the central plaza and stared down the injured student. It's targeting me. This is bad. I can't beat this monster. But if I don't, it'll attack the others. So, I have to at least stall it until the pros get here. I can do that at least. Take this, Delaware Smash. Izuku flicked his right index finger at the Nomu, biting his lip in pain as an air bullet rocketed towards the hulking beast's head, knocking it back a few meters. However, Nomu didn't retaliate. Shigaraki approached from the side, leisurely strolling with a confident gait. That attack? You're an All Might fanboy, right? 'Cause that pisses me off. He ran right for Izuku, fingers extended. If he touches me, I'm dead. I need to avoid him, too. Sharingan. Ignoring the burning pain he felt from forcing his quirk to activate, Izuku moved as fast as he could, even charging 3% of 1 for all in his legs to grant a speed burst. Your speed stat's really high. I hate that. Shigaraki swiped at Izuku, only managing to snag a bit of fabric over his chest that quickly decayed away. Faster! 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 5%! Izuku exclaimed as he pushed the limits to what his body could handle, managing to now comfortably keep up with Shigaraki. He glared intently at the boss, doing his absolute best to keep track of his movements. Oh, you're faster? And your eyes? They're so intense. Now I'm really mad. Shigaraki leapt back about 20 feet away from Izuku. Now's my chance. 5% Detroit Smash. Izuku leapt forward, ready to send his opponent packing. I can see where he was hit earlier. If I strike there, he'll probably pass out. Unfortunately, Izuku never even made it there. Nomu appeared in a flash and slammed the former into the ground, nearly shattering his ribs with the blow. Gah! Izuku coughed up blood, stars clouding most of his vision and pain blinding the rest. He could feel the beast's powerful hand crushing his torso against the jagged rubble, forcing his ribcage against his already sore lungs. Nomu looked at Izuku and growled as if about to pounce. Izuku couldn't help but think back to the important moments in his life, seeing how it was clearly about to end. The day he first saw the video of All Might saving all those people in the collapsed building. when he learned he was quirkless and his mother just apologized to him. The time Kaken and his friend beat him up while their original victim escaped. When he met All Might, got told off by All Might, then praised by All Might in the span of a few hours. Recovery girl telling him that he actually had a quirk. Getting into UA. Finally catching up to Kaken. I still have so much left to do. He clawed at the hand on his chest, ignoring the searing pain in his right arm. Nomu looked at Izuku almost quizzically, unable to decipher the pained gasping. Izuku's eyes felt like they were on fire, but so did the rest of him. Nomu, with its simple mind, couldn't help but get hypnotized by the glowing red in his victim's eyes, the two tomos spinning so rapidly they appeared to be a solid black ring around his pupils. There was a loud sound like a bang. Why can't you ever save yourself, you damn nerd? Bakugo blasted his way in and launched a powerful blast at Nomu's back, forcing the beast to lighten his grip in pure surprise. Get off me! Izuku finally hissed. In that moment, he heard a ringing sound and his eyes positively screamed in pain. But Nomu complied, removing his hand from Izuku while still kneeling over him. Nomu, what are you doing? Shigaraki cried in panic to no avail. But more shockingly, Nomu's normally blank eyes were now glowing red, with two tomos surrounding the pupil. What the? Izuku didn't let himself dwell on the fact. He had a mission. Gotta stop him now. If he fights All Might, if he fights the others, I need to stop him now. Izuku couldn't make a fist, so he focused one for all into his palm, much like he did against Bakugo, but now at full power. Green lightning swarmed Izuku's right hand, crackling with such ferocity, the ground beneath it crumbled away. Take this? Izuku roared as he pushed his hand against Nomu's head, forcing all the power he could muster out. There was a bright flash and a Nomu screech. Then the latter was sent flying back, a massive chunk of his head missing while the rest crackled with green lightning. It landed on the ground with a thud. Izuku looked at the fallen monster and laughed, an incredible lightness filling his body. Then he collapsed back. Bakugo was at a loss for words. The students at the top of the entrance, struggling to find a way to help out, were at a loss for words. Yaoyorozu and Shiro, who had rappelled down to aid in the inevitable injuries that would result, were at a loss for words. The villains were certainly at a loss for words. Midoriya. Kirishima broke the silence in the compound by charging towards his fallen classmate, propping his unconscious body up. Christ, your hand? Shiro and Yaoyorozu managed to pull themselves together and ran over as well, the latter already producing bandages and antiseptic to treat the greenette. Bakugo couldn't stop staring for the life of him. That blast! When did you catch up like that? Gur! God damn it! Shigaraki clawed at his neck until blood drew at the sight of his Nomu. The head wound was taking its sweet time to regenerate, and even then, it was unclear if Nomu would have the stamina to fight anymore. My anti-symbol of peace, defeated by a child. Tamura looked at the unconscious boy, currently having his bloody hand wrapped up in fresh gauze. That kid. Before he himself knew it, Shigaraki was headed right for Midoriya, killing intent on full display. He got pretty close too and might have succeeded in disintegrating his target, if not for a giant ice wall. And I was worried you might be able to kill All Might. Todoroki deadpanned as he pulled his right hand back, mist wafting off of his fingertips. The large one's supposed to be the weapon. But he's down, and the only other one that's down is Midoriya. How did he do this? Shigaraki didn't have time for another rant because Bakugo managed to pull himself together and aim his remaining gauntlet at the former. You know, I didn't get to show OFF since Deku destroyed the other one, but take this. Die. He pulled the pin on the gauntlet, sending a massive explosion towards the villain boss. The ice wall shattered under the pure force of the blast, which also sent Shigaraki flying back towards Kurogiri. The fireball itself filled the air with the acrid stench of smoke while obscuring either side from each other. Ugh, Kurogiri. Shigaraki groaned, shiny red burns dotting his body. The warp man appeared through the smoke. I'm here, Tamura. We should leave now. The boss was silent but nodded. Shall I retrieve Nomu? Kurogiri expanded his form into a portal large enough for Tamura to enter through. Shigaraki nodded again. He's still healing, so he's not dead, but that brat's attack completely surpassed his shock absorption. I doubt he'd be able to fight All Might now. Kurogiri didn't say much else as he summoned another portal beneath the nearly regenerated Nomu. Don't worry, Shigaraki. This is only the beginning. They disappeared around the same time as the smoke did. Coincidentally, the rest of the villains started to wake up around the same time. Hey, what happened? Shigaraki's gone. So's the big guy. The students, they're still here though. Wait, so they beat the boss? All Might's not here either. Who cares, let's kill them. Then we'll kill All Might? There was a crash and a furious voice. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Later that night, Izuku awoke with a start, his heart racing as he desperately searched for Shigaraki and his beast. What the hell, where am I? He looked at the white walls and flooring as well as the curtains around him. You're in the nurse's office, young Midoriya? Izuku turned to the speaker and came face to face with All Might in his skinny form, sitting right next to his bed. All Might? Are you okay? What about everyone else? 13-sensei? Aizawa-sensei? Izuku began to sweat. All Might couldn't help but laugh at the irony of his protégé's concern. Your classmates are all fine. Many of them are actually still here, waiting to get picked up by their families. I arrived only shortly after you passed out and defeated the remaining villains. The pro's face took on a slightly darker look. As for your teachers, I'm afraid Aizawa and 13 are both in the ICU. They're expected to recover, but they're not in the best of health. Although, for that matter, neither are you. Izuku looked at his body and nearly freaked out at the number of bandages surrounding his torso and right arm. I look like a mummy. What happened to me? All Might cleared his throat and pulled out a clipboard. Recovery girl had to go check on your teachers at the real hospital, but she healed your broken ribs and arm as well as replacing the skin on your hand. She said you might have some hairline fractures left, but healing those might drain your stamina. You have small tears in your leg muscles dash, probably from when I overdid it with one for all when I tied the villains up. Izuku murmured. And your hand is permanently scarred, but other than that, you're fine. There was some silence in the room before both student and teacher cried, Wait, what? Izuku ripped the bandages off his right hand and sucked in his breath at the sight, much like his mentor. His right hand had 2 scars along the palm and his fingers were slightly crooked. The skin also looked slightly pink, but given that it was essentially regrown, that was to be expected. The symbol of peace looked down. I'm so sorry, young Midoriya. If I was quicker, if I was there today to begin with, this is my fault. We were just lucky that young Siro and Yaoyorozu were able to stop the bleeding. Izuku shook his head. It's not your fault, All Might. I did this to myself, even after Aizawa-sensei told me not to. All Might gulped, internally giddy that his student harbored him no ill will. Well, at least there's no damage to its function. And I heard that girls like scars? As if I know anything about that. Izuku just sighed. I guess that's the price for not mastering One for All. But I was able to control 3%. And I did do something really cool with it. What's that? Izuku held out his hand. I couldn't make a fist, so I concentrated it into my palm and then it started sparking like crazy. And when I hit the Nomu, everything exploded. Suddenly, Izuku paled. What about the Nomu? And the villain boss? All Might shook his head. We didn't get them. They left with that warp quirk guy. All we got from the captured villains were their names. Tamura Shigaraki and Kurogiri. He put a hand to his chin, but you concentrated One for All into essentially your skin to produce explosive power while preserving your bones. That's actually kinda ingenious. Huh, really? All Might shrugged. Breaking your bones might cause longer-lasting damage, but skin is a bit easier to heal, especially with Recovery Girl. Although, I doubt that it's anywhere near as powerful as the punch you used against the zero-pointer. Izuku nodded. And I haven't trained enough to regulate where I focus One for All, so my control is pretty bad. Well, with the Sharingan, you were able to control 3% after only a few days. So learning that shouldn't be too hard. Oh, one more thing. All Might muttered, Jesus, kid. I can't take many more surprises for today. I looked at Nomu for a moment with the Sharingan and, I don't know, it was like I could control him, you know? Like I could just insert whatever I wanted into his mind and he'd do it. You get what I'm saying? You might. All Might was shaking. Scary. That sounds familiar though. All Might? The hero cleared his throat. Well, maybe it's another ability of the Sharingan. You know how you activated it. I just really wanted him to get off of me. Then I looked at him in the eye and he just got off of me. It sounds like a dangerous power. The ability to control others through eye contact. I'll speak to Recovery Girl about it, but I don't think you should use it too often. Lots of ethical quandaries with a power like that. All Might cleared his throat. Anyways, that's enough serious talk for now. It's late and I'm sure your mother is worried about you. Your classmates certainly are. All Might gingerly helped Izuku into a fresh UA jacket and ensured his bandages were still securely tied. Then he led Izuku back to outside Class 1A, where many of his classmates were still waiting to be taken home. This is where I must leave you. I'm afraid I can't maintain my muscle form any longer. Izuku nodded. Thanks, All Might. Oh, for everything. The pro seemed taken aback, but smiled. Of course, Midoriya, my boy. Enjoy the weekend as much as you can. Midoriya nodded and quietly entered the classroom, only to nearly jump into the ceiling in surprise. Hey, Midoriya's back. Kirishima practically shouted, running to his friend. Midoriya. Glad to see you in good health. Ida saluted his fellow class officer with a relieved smile. Kaminari twitched. Hey Midoriya. Sorry for the T-twitch. Happens after I overdo it. Jiro just chuckled from behind. Hey Midoriya. I heard you were cool. Kaminari blushed. That's not funny G. He couldn't say her name, much to her amusement. Midoriya, good to see that you're mostly recovered. Yaoyorozu smiled. Oh, Yaoyorozu, I heard you and Siro gave me first aid. Thank you. Izuku bowed, slightly blushing from the overwhelming well wishes. She waved him off. It was nothing. You helped me earlier with the villain boss. Although, she sighed, I feel like I should apologize. W at 4? It's just that, I thought you were too shy and awkward and too jumpy to be a hero. Izuku laughed sheepishly. She and everyone else. But you were the most decisive out of all of us today. I guess I just want to apologize for judging you harshly and thank you for teaching me I still have a ways to go. She bowed deeply, much to Izuku's embarrassment. And no, I'm definitely super shy and weird and awkward. You don't have to apologize at all. I should be apologizing. He bowed right back. No. I insist that I was wrong. I'm sorry you feel the need to feel sorry. She bowed even faster. This continued for some time until even Ida muttered, this seems excessive. Kirishima just laughed. From you, that's ironic. The only thing that could have stopped the bowing battle burst through the door at that moment. Izuka. My ribs. Shigaraki Tamura growled as Kurojairi applied a bandage to his head wound, beaten by low-level NPCs. This is humiliating. Kurojairi placated. Patience, Shigaraki. Your victory will come in time. A rich, deep voice sounded from the TV. Listen to Kurojairi, Tamura. Today's battle may have been lost, but the war is far from over. It's only just begun. And today you laid the foundation for their defeat. But, Sensei, I didn't even get to the final boss. Nomu was defeated before then. A sigh escaped the powerful voice. Well, that's unfortunate, but at least you recovered him. Losing a Nomu this powerful would have been a tremendous waste. And now, I can make him even stronger than before. Shigaraki groaned as the antiseptic burned his wound, but Nomu was beaten by someone so tiny. Was it really a mini-boss? This boy that defeated him, what was his quirk? Some sort of enhancement quirk. Incredibly powerful, but it caused him damage at full power from what I saw. Kurojairi explained, although the attack that injured Nomu was interesting. It was more electricity than brute force. The electricity? What color was it? Kurojairi raised an intangible eyebrow. It was green maybe? The voice chuckled. Yellow to blue to green. Funny. Sensei? Never mind me, Tamura. Just an old man's musings. Anyways, we merely underestimated these students, but it won't happen again, yes. Shigaraki growled, never. I'll never forget those damned eyes again. Eyes? What eyes? Even later that night, Izuku slowly trudged down the stairs of his apartment complex, garbage bag in tow. After coming home, after his mother nearly flooded UA with her tears, the Midoriyas feasted on katsudon and cried. Then they ate more katsudon and cried more. Sometimes they did both at the same time. Either way, Inko passed out from exhaustion, worry, dehydration, or, most likely, a combination of all three, leaving Izuku to clean, which he didn't mind doing. Approaching the dumpster, Izuku threw the bag over the metal container's walls and took a moment to smile at a job well done, interrupted only by a whimpering, ah. His hair stood up straight and his skin bleached. Again. Is someone there? He took extra care to listen, but didn't hear anything. I'm sure I heard it this time, but to be sure, Sharingan. Izuku scanned the dumpster for life signs. A few rats, a couple bugs, a kid, more rats, what the hell? Izuku got really close to the dumpster. That's definitely a human. It's a child. She's shaking, I know you're in there. There was a small gasp and Izuku could see the glowing form of the child through his Sharingan tense up. You should come out and go home. Your parents are probably worried. There was no response, so Izuku sighed, deactivated his Sharingan, and pulled himself up and over the edge of the dumpster, favoring his left arm for obvious reasons. Great. Now I need to clean my shoes. He looked around but didn't see anything where the child was supposed to be saved for a filthy mop. Wait. Wasn't that in the recycling yesterday? Izuku dug around the mop, which actually turned out to be hair. And the source of the voice was indeed a child. A small girl with teary red eyes and a large horn at that. Izuku smiled, there you are. You should really go home. It's super late. She didn't respond, but stared at him fearfully, trying to shift back in the filth, as if to seek comfort in the camouflage it provided. What the heck? Hey, it's okay. I want to help you. I'm a student at UA. My name's Izuku, what's yours? He extended his right hand out to show goodwill. She didn't say anything at first, but widened her eyes at his arm. Did they get you too? Izuku cocked his head. They? Who's they? What does she mean too? The girl gestured to her arms, which were also covered in bandages, although rather poorly. That can't be hygienic anymore. What happened to this girl? Hey, it's okay. I'm going to be a hero. I'll protect you if you're scared. Izuku reached out and cupped her cheek, flashing his best all-might brand smile. At first, the girl seemed to shirk away, but she gradually leaned into his hand, eyes tearing up. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't want to scare you. He tried to pull his hand back, but she gasped when he did so and instinctively grabbed it and placed it back on her cheek. While she didn't smile, the corner of her lips tugged outward slightly. Izuku smiled again, this time as genuinely as he could. Let's try this again. My name's Izuku. What's yours? Eri, she whispered, still clutching his hand to her face as if fearful that he'd disappear. He smiled at her. It's nice to meet you, Eri. I promise, it's all gonna be okay now. Wanna know why? Why? Because I am here. She looked at him quizzically but nodded after a moment, her eyes shining and her lips tugging as far up as she seemed capable of doing. Izuku, we should probably get out of the trash soon.